Oh, big stretch. Big stretch, Toffee. Good girl. Good girl, Toffee. Big stretch. Okay. All right. Take a sippy sip. All right. Stream seems to have not completely and totally exploded. Thank God. I need to message my wife. Also, why is chat... There we go. Chat's fixed. Thank God. Okay. Message my wife. Put down my phone. And we are ready to go. Good morning, anyone. Currently, just the VOD watchers are seeing this. I don't think anyone's in chat just yet. I've been thinking about the difficulties of making live stream content knowing that it'll be watched as a VOD. There is a lot that I, as a viewer, know that I don't enjoy when I watch back stream replays. Honestly, I usually skip until like 20 minutes in, as if I were entering a stream that was actually going live. The starting bits, which as the nature of the medium are required for the chat to filter in and people to actually click on the link and know that the thing is live, it's a lot of dead air and or missed opportunities for the full audience because only the first couple of people get to see it. Also, hi, Jim. Welcome in. But it's just the nature of the medium. There's not much that can be done about it, is the thing. But still, it's interesting to think about. One of the things that I considered doing today was having no music whatsoever, specifically so that I could re-edit the VOD into a more watchable video essay of some sorts. But the problem with that then becomes the VOD, the actual like full VOD, becomes a less enjoyable experience compared to the other VODs around it. So like it's a fucked if you do, fucked if you don't kind of situation. Tegan says I just skip ahead like 5 minutes. You just breeze over the starting bits. But what if there's a good bit in there, Tegan, and definitely not really boring setup, you know? When I was downloading and uploading the VODs, I was opposed to direct exporting them. I'd cut right to when I switched from starting soon to live. You just like eviscerate, you Thanos snap that percentage of your VOD. I don't need the world to know about that. I don't need anyone to see any of that shit. All right. There's no good bit on live streams. I just sit quietly. That's true. But then, conversely, Tegan, having no good bits on your streams and just sitting quietly makes for a less good stream experience for the people who are showing up right as your stream starts. So it's always a trade-off. Always a trade-off. You and Rocky do the vamping. That is true. I do like vamping. I do like hearing myself talk. It's the 4 feet 33 inches of streaming. I don't understand that reference, Jim. I hope it's not a sex thing. I get my water and stuff before I start streaming. I try to make sure that I have everything. However, I have noticed that after I hit going live, my brain goes completely blank. So I'm like, all right, first things first, make loud stretching noises so the audience knows you're there. And hopefully in the time it takes for you to crack your back, you'll have thought of something to speak about. 4:33 is a famous piece of art music that's just silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. I see. Good morning, Aya. Welcome in. How are you doing this fine morning? It is a balmy winter's day here in Florida. I believe my house is around 60, 61, 62 degrees right now. We're trying to let the house remain cool for as long as possible, so we're using less of our electricity. Gadda, I have been at work for 1.5 hours. That sounds like a you problem, to be blunt. That sounds like a you issue, skill issue. You've done absolutely nothing but twiddle your thumbs. Are you being paid? That is something that I need to know. Are you being paid? Because as long as you're being paid, you can sit and twiddle your thumbs for as long as you like. A large portion of my job, now that I've been promoted to manager, not the main manager, but like a primary manager, I get the most manager shifts, I guess. A lot of my job is literally just sitting at a desk, watching cameras to make sure that the people under me don't actively need me to intervene, and waiting for something to happen. Now, when things happen, I work at a job that involves a whole lot of money. So like, it's really important that I do things in a timely fashion and I do them correctly. So it's not like I'm being paid for nothing. However, time-wise, a lot of it is just sitting at my desk waiting to be needed, which is why I post on Blue Sky so frequently. You ever wonder why you logged in and all you see is like pages upon pages of Donkey Kong fan art being retweeted? That's me. That's me. Love be a good feast or famine job. Exactly, Jim. Good morning, Rocky. Welcome in. Welcome in. We'll be getting started in just another couple of minutes. Recently, due to the fact that it is February, after the holidays, you know, things kind of slow down. Pardon me. Things kind of slow down. We don't need as many people to be active. It's a lot of sitting around with other managers who normally would be divvying up the work because it'd be busy enough to need us. But now we're both looking at each other like, when the layoffs come, who will stand with me and who will betray me? I joke, we're not in danger of any layoffs, but still it's like a lot of sitting around and being like, wow, haha, I am completely superfluous. And I don't trust the corporation not to see that as an expense that they can cut during the slow months. Oh no. Tegan says, I prefer the Sonic fan art to the Donkey Kong fan art personally. Wow, I can't believe Tegan has no taste. No taste. No taste whatsoever. Oh well. Aya said, I saw how much they're paying the staffing company for me. Hey, as long as they've paid, that's all that matters in the long run. Tegan has great taste. If liking Sonic fan art is wrong, I don't want to be right. Your nibbling is into Sonic, but Tegan, your Gadda is into Donkey Kong. You have to choose. You're gonna choose the nibbling, but in this instance, I like to pretend that I'm even possibly on the block. Everything I learn about Sonic, I get from your feeds. Oh no. Uh-oh, gamers. Friendship ended with Sonic? No, hyperfixation temporarily redirected this to Donkey Kong. It'll pass. It'll pass. All right. This is way too energetic a song for how I am personally feeling at this moment. So I'm actually going to just switch to the next one. Well, this one's not much better. It's got banjos involved. All right, well, we'll call that good. Let's go ahead and get started. Howdy, farm hands. Good morning. Welcome to the stream. Welcome, 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 welcome. It is a bright and shiny 9 a.m. here on the farm. And we have some stuff that we have to do today. The big one, which I'm sure you know from the title and the post on the social media, I've been going on a bit of an adventure. I posted my opinions about the beta playtest. That's what I was looking for the officially kickstarted Neopets TTRPG, and things kind of spiraled from there. It has been a long week. I ended up being a guest on the Dovecote, which is a TTRPG Twitch talk show. Unfortunately, that VOD was uploaded in the middle of a big Twitch-wide issue where VODs were not being saved correctly. So that VOD and all of the opinions that I shared in it have been lost to time. I don't feel okay with just moving on with my life without having a proper rant session. So what we're going to do is play Hightail, and I'm going to rant. I'm going to talk. I have notes. I have... Where's chat? Where the fuck is chat? Hold on a second. Why did chat not show up? There we fucking go. Okay. It wouldn't be a Gadda stream without difficulties right off the bat. But I think everything else should be working. All right. We're over there. It's okay. Yeah, you're just like slightly out of frame. Chat is with me always. Always. I will point out that I did fix Nightbot, so you are going to see some minor advertisements during stream. But also I got some links fixed. So actually, if we type in, hey, exclamation point, hey. Oh, I see. The Nightbot advertisement doesn't show up on stream. Oh, but it is showing up in chat. Okay, well, problem solved, I guess. Problem solved. Does kind of ruin the whole point of having some minor advertisements showing up during the VOD, but whatever, I'll deal with that later. I'm still working on getting this place back into working order after a year away. Let's go ahead and switch over to Hightail, and then we can start talking. We'll make a graphic. It'll be a whole thing. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. All right. And boop. Nope. I have to not be in the chat to press keybinds to make things happen. Well, that's true, but also the wrong keybind. Hold on. I'll remember it eventually. Is it this one? Yes. There we are. Scandal. I know. It's so horrible. I can't believe the world knows that I love my wife. All right. Let me pull up my notes and put them up here. All right. I love that keybind. It's a good keybind. It does what it says on the tin. Alrighty then. So, first things first, cracks my knuckles and all of my toes. Who here does not know what Neopets is? Do I have to explain Neopets? Do I have to give you guys like a baseline understanding of what Neopets is before we get into the whole thing? I don't think so. Most of my audience are fellow millennials who should have at least basic knowledge. Oh, Rocky has no idea. Got it. Oh, and it's night. Hold on, I can't see shit. I can't see a goddamn thing. Oh, I've put a wall there. I can't just jump over this now. Stuffing shit here. Did I turn on Silent Hill by mistake? No, I promise I didn't. I promise I didn't. Yes, Tegan. You have questions and or concerns? Just go around? No, because that would spoil the surprise. I want to show off what I've done with my house. So Neopets is a website, a pet simulator website that came into being in 1999. Originally, it was just a fun little project between two college buddies who later on got married. Good for them. To while away their time. They're a British couple. But the website gained popularity. You could adopt a series of PNGs that were fantastical monsters. You would feed them. You would gain Neopoints. There was a forums attached. And basically, it was just a fun little time waster. Eventually, children realized, hey, this is a lot of fun. And Neopets became a full-on corporation with flash games and ways to earn fictional currency to trade for items to make their pets happier. And it was a good time. It was a great time. Old, says C. Old. I know. Actually, among the people who were in that Dovecoat episode, I had been playing Neopets the longest. I started playing Neopets December 14th, 2001. And I know this because it was my 10th birthday, the day of my 10th birthday, that I made my Neopets account. I need to get more seeds for this area. Farmer Gadda, Neopet Sage. It's true. It's true. Everyone should think I'm fantastic for this. Everyone should worship me. Let's see here. Let's also sell all of this. As you can see, I have been working on expanding my crop fields, but it's a bit of a process. I know the old texts. It's true. The ancient texts, the scrolls. All right. But yes, the website gained in popularity. I want to say at its height, it had 3 million concurrent users, which was wild at the time. Mind you, I'm talking like 2001 to 2006 were like the years that Neopets was really in full swing. Its popularity waned after 2006, but it was popular enough to get both McDonald's and Burger King tie-ins in different countries. It got a PlayStation 2 role-playing game. There was going to be like an animated movie at one point, but that unfortunately fell through. Not because of like the movie's fault or the IP's fault. They just couldn't get a writer to stay with the project. This was back when if you were on Neopets and your mom picked up the phone, your Neopets exploded. It's true. It's fucking true. All right. So for the interest of our story, I will jump ahead in the Neopets future quite a bit to the year 2024. Neopets had gone through a number of different hands. It had been bought out by a number of... Oh, is it my beautiful wife? Well, it better be. No one else should better walk into this house. Everyone, say hello to my beautiful wife. I am borrowing. She's pointing at the water...
My water bottle.
Her water bottle, which I borrow when I'm streaming and she's not home. I thought you were going to talk to Mimi, or did you already... No, that was handled?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry for stealing your water bottle. I love you. Everyone says hi, beautiful wife, and Tegan's mad at me that I'm a thief. Gotta get your own water bottle. True. True. But also no. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Neopets was sold to a number of people, including Nickelodeon, who sold it to an edutainment firm called Jumpstart. And Jumpstart was then bought out by a Chinese corporation whose name I don't recall. But basically, after the heyday of the website itself was mostly left to rot as the various IP holders repeatedly attempted to make Neopets something that it's not. I mentioned the animated movie. There were attempts to make mobile games. Jumpstart was the Leapfrog guys. Is that a fact? I thought Leapfrog was a separate organization, but I could be wrong. Basically, the original website with all of its features were left to rot. And eventually, with the end of Flash support, because the website and most of its interactable stuff was built on Flash, the website became mostly unusable. However, in 2022 or 3, I think, the devs who were still working on the project bought it outright. They just straight up said, hey, we will pay you to buy Neopets back because you're not doing anything with it. And like, we want to give it a go. So the actual developers of Neopets now own Neopets, and they've made their own corporation, World of Neopia Incorporated. So this is good. This is good. Neopets is back in the hands of those who care about it. I believe there's only like 9 people on staff, so it's a very small corporation, and they've been doing great strides to bring the website back to functionality. There are still plenty of things that are broken, but they've partnered with Ruffle, which is basically a Flash emulator, to make as many minigames as possible functional again. They've been working on more merchandise. We got a Neopets version of Monopoly coming out. We have crossovers with other brands currently. Boba tea business Gongsha, I believe is how it's pronounced, is doing a Neopets crossover with a bunch of Neopets Boba-themed plushies. There are a number of tabletop and board game experiences being worked on. It's not a bad time to be a Neopets fan, especially as Neopets is kind of leaning into the fact that most of their fan base for this children's video game website are millennials with kids of their own. The Neopets fandom has never really left. They still play the game despite the game being broken, but it's usually like the diehards who are actively like on the website doing stuff. Again, because the website has not really been functional. But that's being fixed, so people are coming back. And with that marketing push, one of the things that happened is that the merchandise partner Neopets has been going with for a lot of these things, a company called Geekify, has kickstarted a tabletop role-playing game, which is where my story properly starts. Do they have a unique insight to making it a viable website in the current environment? Currently, the majority, what's to stop them from making it an app? Well, it's interesting you say that, because they're doing both. Upkeep on the main website, because that is where the current fandom exists, is something that they have been focusing on. However, under their previous owners, they did make 2 mobile games. One is Fairy Fragments, which is a Candy Crush-esque sort of match 3 game. And Tales of Decardia, which is a 3D city builder game, wherein you go to an island where Neopets are, and you have to rebuild their society after a horrible storm has broken all of their houses. Those apps are fully functional, and I play them myself. They're okay. I've definitely played worse Candy Crush clones, and it gets me free shit for the main website, so I can like play the mobile games and get Neopets for my pets on the original website, which is fun. They're also working on 2 other apps. One is a companion app, which is basically a truncated version of the Neopets website for you to do your daily updates. Boomer says, cries in it being referred to as a Candy Crush game and not a Bejeweled game. I never played Bejeweled. Simmer down. Also, get in my chat and talk to me if you have something to say to me, good sir. Good sir. Nah, he says. Okay, well, fair enough, I suppose. I've never played Bejeweled. Nope. In my household, we were a snood family. Thank you very much. Thank you. I doubt any of you know what snood is, but whatever. Gadda, it was free on like every computer with Solitaire forever. Well, what the fuck is snood? Exactly. Anyway, they are working on a pair of apps. One is the truncated website app, which is simply called Neopets Companion App. It's fine. It's a little buggy. There's some stuff where it won't properly trigger the results on the website, but it's functional. I can see a future wherein they do convert the entire website into an app-based experience, although a number of the games that are on it really only work with mouse and keyboard. There is also an app that they are working on called World of Neopets, which we don't know much about other than the fact that it shows the Neopets pet characters in 3D. So arguably it's either going to be its own thing separate from the website, or it's going to be the website with a 3D sort of existing in the overworld Club Penguin kind of vibe. We don't know yet. But those are both still in production. They're still being developed. Time will only tell. All right, now I'll break this. But yes, one of their merchandising partners, Geekify, who they have been going through for various pins. They did advent calendars through Geekify. There's been a couple of projects that Geekify has manufactured for Neopets. They did a Kickstarter in, I want to say, May or June of 2024. I'm actually a little shaky on the month. I probably should have written that down, but I didn't. They did a Kickstarter for a Neopets tabletop role-playing game. And if you know anything about Gadda, you'll know that I was there the millisecond I heard about it to look it over to see if it was worth supporting. I have seen a lot of people, both those who know me and those who don't, refer to my coverage and critique of the Neopets TTRPG as being hate. But I do want to publicly state, for the record, I wanted the Neopets TTRPG to be good. I still want the Neopets TTRPG to be good. I want to play a Neopets TTRPG in the wild and whimsical world of Neopia with my blue Kugra, feeding them omelets and gelatin and throwing snowballs at each other in a life or death battle dome situation. Like, I genuinely love the brand, even though I had been absent from it for a long while. And it's not just nostalgia talking. Like, I've been playing so much Neopets, guys. Over the last 2 weeks, I actually managed to regain access to my childhood account, and I've combined it up with my my more active adult one. I have to wait a couple of months to be able to transfer my childhood Neopets over to the new account, but soon, my beloved neon blue Kugra will be home, and I'm very happy. But yeah, so like when I critiqued the game, both when it was initially launched on Kickstarter, and again when the beta came out and we were able to read what the work in progress document looks like, it is in the spirit of wanting it to be good and having very strong opinions that currently it is not. And we'll get into why it's not good, but first I want to talk a bit about what was actually on the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter did not have anything by way of serious mechanics to show. A lot of it, there was some very good art and a lot of large sweeping promises about what the game was going to be. However, I've been around the block a couple of times, and Kickstarter's promising features that do not make it to the final product is just a fact of life. In fact, half the time you support a Kickstarter and nothing ever comes of it. If anyone backed the Dirty Pair Kickstarter way back in the day, yeah, they only got their DVDs like this year or late last year, if it a whole thing. Aya says, your Kugra versus Maisha. No, they're friends. They have to be friends. They're not enemies, they're friends. Oh, I don't have any room in my inventory. That's why I couldn't craft it. All right, and then we go here. Make as many of those as possible. I thought we were doing the Neopets Thunderdome. True. Oh, I have so many sticks and nothing to use them on. Okay. Yeah, Sheila says, everyone seems to have forgotten that Kickstarter is what we were taught stocks were as kids. You invest in an idea / product service / development and hope something comes out of it. Kickstarter has very much become a pre-order service, which, like, if it wants to be that, fine. But, like, that's not what the point of Kickstarter was at the beginning. Let me just real quickly dump all of these things that I can. Whoops, no higher, buddy. There we go. Get all that shit in there. Jim says, not gonna name names, but I'm still bitter that I backed a video game with unique art style that they completely managed to ship of Theseus out by the time the game came out. Yeah, and we'll get to that, actually. There has been some ship of Theseusing, all right? Let me talk about the actual Kickstarter itself while I go search for some trees. So, first of all, the Kickstarter apparently, reportedly, on its own terms, was in progress for 2 years before the Kickstarter went live. The discussion of the mechanics of the game stated that originally the game was going to be based on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. However, a year and a half before the Kickstarter went live, this is Aspen. I need ash, and I need birch. Before a year and a half had passed between when the Kickstarter went live and when they decided to change focus from a derivative OGL-based Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition system to an original system, which, to be fair, they did describe as being familiar to fans of Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder. It was still going to be a D20 based system. It was probably still going to... Oh, hold on. That's a bird right there. What is... Oh, it's a snake. That's a snake. I'm like, what is hissing at me? Come here, you little shit. Come here, you little shit. Well, if you're running away, then I guess I'll leave you be. All right, I'll leave you be. Why not? So, 2 years before they started. All right? Which, to me, heavily implies that there was a working document at that point of development. The Kickstarter did not show it. There was a lot of promises, which I will list off for you now. The Kickstarter claimed the full game would have 55 species, regional variants, with dressing and accessorizing them being a strong component. Accessible gameplay, which is, quote, intuitive and easy. This was a claim made separate from them stating that would be familiar to D&D players, okay? There would be random events, which, similar to the actual website, whenever you refresh a page or click elsewhere in the website, there was a percentage chance that, quote, something could happen, which would be a little extra doodad on the screen. And it could be like it would be like, you got some Neopoints from a friendly NPC, or this named character from this part of the website you know says something to you, or you get a free avatar or a free item. Just, it made the world feel alive as you were clicking through the web pages. The Kickstarter promised that random events, truly random events, would be a part of the process, okay? The Battle Dome was listed, which is basically where Neopets has you fight. You can train up the stats of your Neopets and give them items to fight in turn-based combat against various computer NPCs. It's very early 90s where like the PNGs just like say, so-and-so did this attack, so-and-so did that attack, so-and-so wins the battle, that sort of thing. Tables for everyone. Yes, we'll get to the tables, don't worry. The Kickstarter promised the Battle Dome would be a thing. And for my notes, this was me editorializing for the discussions around the game. The Battle Dome was listed as being separate from the main experience. Not that battling would be the core of the experience, which is something we'll talk about as this conversation continues. Item crafting was mentioned. And this actually is the one sort of snapshot into potential mechanics that we get on the Kickstarter. It shows a mock-up page of what the item crafting rules would be. Oh, I got this guy. Hang on. Go away. Die. Cease to exist. There we go. Lovely. All right. For trees, and here's a birch log. Wonderful. The mechanics listed are fairly simple. They state that an item that is unwanted can be broken down into motes. Now, motes are things that exist on the Neopets website, so I don't have a problem with this being the mechanic they go through. But essentially, you would roll a die related to the value of the item that you were crafting. I believe the example given was that uncommon items would be like rolling a d6, and that would tell you how many motes of the element of the thing that you were breaking down you would receive. And then those motes could be used as crafting materials to make new items or upgrade other still existing ones. Not a bad not a bad mechanic, in my opinion. Perfectly fine. It is the only mechanic we see in the entire Kickstarter. Literally just that. All right. Factions and reputation. They have an entire section talking about how if you want to join a thieves guild, you can join a thieves guild. If you want to make enemies with a known faction of like the kings and queens across the medieval fantasy worlds of Neopia, you can. It makes a big deal about faction play. Which is not present in the beta document at all. Mini games. Now, this is a big one. Enemies and Neopets. Well, we'll get there, Tegan, because I have actually a lot to say to defend the TTRPG. I have a lot to say to defend the TTRPG, even in its current state, for as much as I dislike it and want it to be something else. They are not all friends, and there is a major disconnect between the brand as it markets itself in the public eye and the website as is experienced by people who actually played the original game. Jim says OSR Neopets. Again, Jim, we'll get there. All right. Mini games are a big deal on the official Neopets website. The flash-based mini games where you play in various skill tests of reflexes, key presses, mouse movements, and your high score is then translated into Neopoints, which is the website's currency. Well, free currency. Oop, that's a bear. That's a bear. Nope, 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 nope. Are you still after me? Yes, you are still after me. I'm not getting out of this, apparently. All right. And jump. And ow. Okay, hold on. Actually, if I do the blocking thing. Nope, it didn't work. Actually, I can roll dodge, right? Oh, look at me go. Oh, what the fuck did I hit? That's fine. I meant to do all that. Did I hit a button and the emote wheel came up? I didn't know that was a thing. That turns that around. What on earth did I hit? Here's the roll button. That's the Windows button, which opened up my thing. That's crouch. I hit something that made the emote wheel come up. And frankly, I don't know what, but we'll worry about it later. We'll worry about it later. I'm working on getting trees. Neopets. What was I saying about Neopets? Yes. So the mini games are kind of a big deal. And the Kickstarter promised that mini games would be a component of the TTRPG. I assumed, a number of people assumed, that it would be a core component, considering how integral it is to the basic gameplay loop of the original website. My favorite Neopets minigame is called Ice Cream Machine, where you play as a little chia, which is a vegetation-based Neopets. They kind of look like eggplants with feet and a happy face, in an ice cream machine, a big ice cream factory, where balls of ice cream are being thrown at you, and you move your mouse to dodge them for as long as possible. And different flavors move faster, and some ice cream you can gather as a power-up. It's a favorite. Emotes are double tap alt. Double tapping alt. Oh, there we go. That's not how that should be, frankly. I'll have to fix that when I do server maintenance next time. But yes, and each Flash game, you can submit your scores to the website 3 times per day. You can play as long as you want, but you can only get money from it 3 times per game per day. The fastest flavor that I have experienced, I want to say, is like peach. No, it's vanilla chocolate swirl. That's like 6 or 7 levels in, and that's about where my reflexes make it impossible for me to continue. That's usually about how high I get. I can get about 1,000 or so Neopoints per play, which, depending on what era of Neopets you are playing, is either a reasonable amount of money or pocket change, because the economy is unregulated, and as a result, stuff gets wild. We'll talk about the economy, though. We'll talk about the Neopets economy at some point, all right? But minigames are a big deal. A big deal. For the most people, for the average person who played Neopets, either as a child or just as a casual who's not willing to invest a ton of time into the website. The gameplay loop is you log on, you go to the giant omelet that exists in the caveman world, get a free piece of omelet, go to the jelly world where everything is made of gelatin, get a free piece of jelly from the giant jelly thing there, go back to your Neopets, feed them, maybe you go to the bank and collect your daily bank interest for what you've already deposited, but then you play your favorite minigame 3 times, submit the best scores you got to get more Neopoints, and then you leave. That is the loop of the game. You buy more items as needed. You'll save up for like paintbrushes to color Neopets different colors, or to buy them clothing items. You will, oh, there's a lot of people here, and I don't want to deal with any of that. I was going to find a bed. Oh, why are there so many people? Ha-ha! Hoo-hoo! Oh, there's a bear. There's a bear, and I'm in a hole. This is going great for me, actually. There's another bear. A secondary bear. A second berry. Starter Adventure Neopets Bank Run. Don't get me to it. Hi, Quirtle. Can't wait for hyperinflation rules and playtest 2. Listen. I know you're talking about the economy. I know you're talking about the economy. However, I'm lost, actually. I thought I was running in the right direction, but I think I may have gone the wrong way entirely. Our map is currently not working, so I cannot see where I am going. And this is really ruining my attempts to talk about Neopets. Oh, wait, there's some light over there. That's just mushrooms. Uh-oh. I was gonna go home and go to my bed, but I think I've done fucked up. Wait, what's this over there? Is that a structure? That's a rock. Oh, a river. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. You don't have a waypoint on your compass. Oh, this might not be a problem in a second if these guys kill me. Oh, phew. Oh, God. I heard what sounded like aggressive burping, and then suddenly everything wanted to kill me. Oh. Oh, my God. Scared the shit out of me. Okay. I think that if I follow this river, I think that this should lead me back to my house. Either I'll follow the river down and it'll lead me to my house. Ah, thank God, there it is. Okay, I wasn't too lost. Phew. All right, let's go hop into a bed and we'll go from there. All right, what was I talking about? Neopets, right. But yes, to the average layman, the core gameplay loop is log on, feed your pets, play some mini games, leave. There is some shopping involved. You might travel to different places in the world to experience specific NPCs and whatnot, but for the most part, that is the gameplay loop that people experience. So mini games being a core part of the TTRPG was kind of really important. Puzzles. Now, this is an interesting one because, yes, there are puzzles on the game, on the website. In fact, I would even go as far as calling them ARGs on some level. There are puzzles and quests where you have to know details about the lore of the world. You have to know which NPC to speak to and in which order. You have to know what items will trigger certain events. And a lot of it is trial and error. The quest that I finished recently comes from a Journey to the Center of the Earth kind of steampunk lava location called Moltara. And there is a guy who has a workshop there. And it's organized as though it's like a shop that you buy things at, like the other Neopian shops they have. But he says, hey, if you give me items, I'll try and combine them to make something. And for most items, he can't really do anything. He's like, no, I don't know what to do with that. And it's like okay, well, how do I get this guy to make me something? Because clearly he wants to make me something. What you have to do is journey around Moltara, the various pages of Moltara, and meet a guy who will give you a free lamp, but the lamp is empty. Weird. Well, once you have the lamp, while you're clicking around the Moltara pages, tiny luminescent worm guys will show up. One for like 10 different colors. And it's not every time you load a page. You have to go back at different times of day to find these worms. When you click on them, they're added to your inventory. When you get all 10 worms, you go back to the lamp guy, and he will put them into the lamp, and it'll suddenly be a lit lamp. The lit lamp can then be used to go into a dark cave that you could not enter previously, and you will gain a shiny red crystal called Moltite. Moltite is one of the 4 different ingredients you can get from just clicking around Moltara. You can get obsidian pieces, you can get gears, you can get random scrap metal. And if you give these 4 items to the Tinkerer guy in different combinations, he'll give you back little robot dudes. And you go, oh, I can get like little robot dudes. That's cool. But wait, there's more. If you then give that guy different combinations of those little robot dudes, he'll combine them into larger little robot dudes. And then if you do even more, I only have 2 essence left anyway, so I probably shouldn't be messing around with that. If you give him the combined little dudes, they'll combine into one big Megazord little dude, which you can then put on your Neopet as a wearable. Oh, I put my watering can away. Now I gotta go find it in my chest. Right? So this quest, this interactable puzzle of trying to figure out, well, what's this guy for? What do I use these worms for? How do I get this item that I know was added to the new list of items? Like, what's the deal? A lot of that information is literally just trial and error, and the community will then like give the answer to people so that others can follow in their footsteps. Okay, so puzzles are a big part of Neopets lore and Neopet fandom's culture. On the Kickstarter, puzzles are described more like traps from Dungeons & Dragons. They are things that the DM will put in front of you to prevent you from accessing things or items, and solving them will be so much fun. Yes, they will. Your DM will give you the hard puzzles, and you'll have to put your brain to work. Oh, I didn't realize that was the last growth stage for these. Oh, I didn't know that you could bone meal. This whole time, I've been just waiting patiently when I could bone meal this shit with a watering can. I can't believe this. Anyway. So, that's a bit of disconnect there. You can't always bone meal them. It's only when they have like a couple growth stages, I guess. Let's see here. I'm still only halfway through listing all the promises that were on the Kickstarter. It has been 40 minutes. This is a problem with the Dovecoat episode, where we talked a lot about what we didn't like in the Kickstarter and the beta document, but like there was more that I wanted to talk about with regards to the culture of Neopets and why the disconnect is happening, and we just physically did not have enough time to do so. So let me try and speedrun a couple more of these. Quests, jobs, and tasks. It very specifically states that you could play the entire game just being a merchant. You could just buy items, sell them for slightly higher, and gain resources that way. You could just flip things, which again is something that is very possible and prominent on the actual Neopets website. It mentions a combat system. At this point, we're like 10 bullet points in. The combat system is separate from the Battle Dome. So, you know, there's that. However, it also combines it with a section called Pacifistic Approach, which stated that you could play the game without needing combat. You could just be nice. Which was a big claim for anyone who has designed a TTRPG ever, but, you know, makes sense. Respecking. The promise was that if you didn't like something, you could simply change it. That your character sheet was completely malleable at all times. That you would be able to undo decisions you had made about your character's progression and without losing that progression. Okay, cool. It mentions training schools, which are, again, a thing in the Neopets' actual website. You would go to a certain location in the world, and there would be there's a pirate school and a ninja school, and they allow you to upgrade your stats in exchange for various resources. The pirates will train you in exchange for doubloons, which are a rare object you can get. The ninja school, there are these mystical glowing sandstones with a rune on them, and they'll trade you those in exchange for some training. Which, okay, perfectly fine. That makes sense to me. Neggs, Neggs, are a collectible on the Neopets website, which are technically a food item, but they also come in a ton of different colorful variants, some of which make more sense than others. Collecting Neggs in Neopets was one of like the big deal things early in the game's development. If you were a neg collector, you'd be spending like millions of Neo points in order to get the ones that you wanted in your inventory. And they were making new ones all the time. They could be eaten, but primarily they were meant to be a very rare object that some people would acquire from random events or find very rarely in stores and purchase and trade. It mentions farming the negs. So in this TTRPG, they are promising that not only will neg collecting be an option for those who remember negs, it would also be something that you could farm. Crops would be a thing in this game, which odd. That's never really been a Neopets thing, but it's a TTRPG, and the whole point is that we are expanding the objectives you can have in a fictional space. You can technically do anything in a role-playing game. Whether or not the system supports it, that's a different matter entirely. Professions. This is an interesting one because professions do show up in the beta document, but not as was suggested by the Kickstarter. Professions were listed as being something separate that you could do. Essentially, you could become a profession. They included options such as dung farmer, collector. I'm trying to think of a couple others, but I didn't write them down, so I don't have them in my notes. But there was like 10 or so different professions that were suggested as jobs of sorts your Neopet could do. This was separate from their character being completely malleable. So my concern at the time, and even now, is like, does this mean that there will be mechanical, maybe perhaps dice-based minigame support for these actions? Or is it more like you will be allowed to roleplay as those professions? But we'll get back to that later, I suppose. And last but not least, they mentioned pets, which, if you don't play Neopets, Neopets are your pets. They talk to you as though you are their owner. They talk to you as though you are their primary caretaker. They are sentient magical animal buddies, not unsimilar to Pokemon, except more sentient, and they have like a whole society which is based around Neopets having humans be their primary caretakers. However, you can then give to your Neopet a pet, which is an even smaller fantasy creature which does not have a society and are not sapients. They are essentially small fictional animals in this universe filled with talking fictional animals. Very Goofy to My Pluto kind of vibes. But mechanically, pets are just another item you can equip to your Neopet. Your Neopet can interact with the pet on some level. The pet can be used in certain minigames and quests that fictionally say your pet has done this, that, or the other. But all it's really doing is checking if your Neopet has a pet, applying the proper PNG and the thing you've named it, and then giving you a result that it was already going to do. So mechanically speaking, pets aren't terribly involved. The Kickstarter promised that pets would be optional. You'd be able to have them. You'd be able to care for them. And they would join you on your journeys. Which, fair enough. That's neat. I'm down for that. All right? These are all the mechanical promises. We haven't even gotten into the stretch goals and physical doodads that would come from this Kickstarter. Okay? I have to literally scroll down on my notes to read the rest of this. Okay? So, with the base Kickstarter, they were going to create a GM screen, a bespoke dice set, a dice pouch, map packs, which were going to be gridded battle maps in the 5th edition kind of vein of thing. So we gave your pet a pet, and then gave that pet a pet. Tegan, you're joking? But pets are a thing. Pets on the Neopets website are like insects. And at one point in time, you could have a terrarium where animated pets would interact, and you could put things in there for them to interact with. But they were ostensibly a little pet you could attach to your pet to further the customization. Pets do not currently exist in the TTRPG beta document. Tegan says, Christ. the last thing that was in the base promise for physical doodads were going to be a small series of journals, essentially blank notebooks with Neopets branding on the outside that you would give to your players for them to take notes about the game that you were playing. All of this is pretty standard for Kickstarters of its ilk. The concern, however, for me was that Geekify is primarily a merchandise producer first, and TTRPG designers never. We'll get to who was on the team, but I will tell you right now that at the time of the Kickstarter, there were no known TTRPG designers attached to the project. The only people who were attached were people who work, on Jelly Neo, which is the #1 Neopets fan website, and whose members are more or less like de facto upper crust of Neopets royalty, I guess. Basically, because Neopets, the team, is like 9 people, and a lot of them grew up as fans of Neopets before becoming members of the core team, there is overlap between like friend groups and like who knows who, between people who are paid to work on Neopets, the website, and people who have dedicated large amounts of time to documenting the website during its era of less than great support. I thought it was turning nighttime, so I was running home for a minute, but no, it was just raining. So there is some crossover. So when people who are fans of Neopets saw the names, they went, oh, I know these people, either directly or indirectly. These are people who have been keeping up with and documenting Neopets lore for years, if not decades. Neopets just passed their 26th anniversary, I do believe. Which is wild for me to say, but whatever. However, the people who were attached who did have TTRPG experience had experience as playing Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder, and their writing credits were homebrewing D&D and Pathfinder, which I do need to stress is not the end of the world. The issue is that that is their only experience, not that they have that experience or that that experience is somehow devalued. People who are really good at working within the constraints of... Hello? What the fuck was that? Woo! Okay, wolf. Thank you. There we go. Part of me wonders if maybe I should have just been doing this to a blank screen, just a purely black screen, and just talking, just letting this be a diatribe, but, you know, whatever. Honestly, the interruptions and the screaming might make it more watchable for people watching the VOD later, or I don't know. No, this is fun. All right, well, as long as you're all enjoying it. I have to remember that that is the way back home. If I had given myself the time to make a PowerPoint, I absolutely would have made this a whole thing. Except you're not following up. It's a perfect Cobblepot, except you're not following a bunch. True. If you help donate towards my current goal, let's see, here we go. Perfect. If you help donate towards my current goal, you can see on top of the screen, I will build a 64 by 64 by 64 cobblestone cube. Is that a fucking bee up there? Are these mines? I haven't encountered this structure. Oh, this could be fun. I mean, I'm not watching per se. I'm working and I'm entertained. That's what matters. That's what matters. Also, hi, Dragonstorm Rising. Welcome in. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Ooh. You know what? I probably shouldn't do this while I'm trying to talk about Neopets. Oh, I found the Badlands. I haven't been here yet. Ooh. Oh, those are big, scary bees. Nope. 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 No. 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 Ah! The snake! I hit a bunch of buttons and I dropped all my shit. I physically jumped and key smashed in real life. That snake scared the shit out of me. Okay. All right. Hold on. Where's my... Okay. Pickaxe goes back here. Oh. Hold on. I key smashed so hard that I closed out of my notes. Whew. All right. Oh, hello, little mouse. Key smashing from jump scares is the funniest thing to do in a game. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad you find it funny. It's a savanna desert. Okay. So I haven't been to the Badlands. Well, I haven't been to that region of the world at all, which is why I got all excited. Oh, there's some ores up there. I'll go get those ores, I think, while I talk. Okay. What was I talking about? Oh, yes. So the individuals who were involved were known community fandom members and Dungeons & Dragons aficionados, which is not a crime, but again, for a game that was publicly stated to not be based on 5th edition due to the OGL and to be its own original system, only having experience with what I consider to be the same flavor of game is not a great look. I understand there are some people, specifically people who have played Pathfinder, who bristle at the idea that D&D and Pathfinder are comparable or interchangeable. I say it not out of malice, but simply because the adjustments made to Pathfinder, specifically 2nd edition, is more... How do I word this? It is aiming for the same play experience that 5th edition was. And there are mechanical changes that I think are good and that make it noticeably different in experience from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But in my personal opinion, as a genre, for the kind of game that these rules support and produce, they are essentially aiming at the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that thing. I don't like that thing, and I think Pathfinder does that thing better than 5th edition does, or at the very least takes more responsibility for doing the thing 5th edition tries to do. But they are still similar enough games that I do not consider experience in one to be markedly different from experience in another vis-a-vis tabletop designer. All right? So that was troubling, but you never know. Maybe they have some grand ideas. Foreshadowing is a literary device in which, anyway. So let me tell you what the stretch goals were, all right? The original Kickstarter asked for $40,000 to make this happen, which, considering how many physical objects they were adding into it in the base Kickstarter, is not unreasonable. But also, I come from a world where indie Kickstarters live or die if they get $2,000 or not. Like, I am used to tabletop role-playing Kickstarters being for significantly less money, even for large branded TTRPGs. You could argue, well, they're making a big hardcover book. They're coming with a whole bunch of like extra doodads, so maybe that money is needed. In the end, they raised $428,000 of the $40,000 they asked for originally. That's a lot of money. And that number is going to come up again because it's kind of half the problem why we're even talking about this. The stretch goals were as such. If the Kickstarter reached $100,000 in United States money, they would include, drumroll please, PDF versions of the game. Now, immediately, this is ridiculously out of touch. It is standard practice that the PDF versions of the game, if a hardcover or physical version even exists, are the core way that people will interact with the game. Digital gaming is what TTRPGs survives on these days. Like, not very few people are physically capable of having a physical table that their friends travel to repeatedly in order to have a long-running campaign. PDFs are the core, like the core way people engage with TTRPGs these days. It was the first stretch goal for $100,000. So already flags are being raised. But you know what? That's fine. They met it. So people are getting their PDF copies. That's fine. Whatever. At $125,000, they would include character sheet packs. Now, this is a little fuzzy in the wording because, like, I'm sure that an actual character sheet was planned for the original release. Like, they would not release a game without a character sheet. And what this stretch goal was offering was essentially specially themed character sheet packs. So if you wanted your character sheet to have a fancy design, you wouldn't have to wait until someone designed it third party to print off. It would just be included in the base game. You would have options, which 125,000, that's a bit expensive for that, but like whatever. They also met it. Premium book cover updates for $150,000. They mentioned wanting to have nicer paper. They mentioned wanting to include gold filigree on the hardcover covers, which, you know what, that is also fine. That's fine. That's actually standard. I have backed a number of Kickstarters that have been like, hey, if we reach this number, we'll be able to afford to make the books prettier. And you know what? That's fine. That's okay. That's all right. At $175,000, they would include art print postcards. I believe the number floated was 4 art print postcards, but don't quote me on that. I didn't write it down. Considering that they managed to get the artist who does art for a lot of official Neopet stuff, having more art be made in a physical thing you could like frame and put on your wall, that's pretty cool. Doesn't really have anything to do with the TTRPG, but whatever, that's fine. At 200,000 American dollars, at the stretch goal of 200,000 American dollars, they were going to include an extra area in the core book, the Rue Island minigame Funland. Now, Rue Island, there is a Neopet called a Bloomaroo in Neopets. They are kind of like kangaroo guys if they had like the head of Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. They're bouncy, they're flouncy, they're fun. And they have an island where the Bloomaroo King has a bunch of carnival-esque mini games you could interact with. So they stated that as a stretch goal, they would include that in the core book. Multiple other locations of Neopia were listed as being visitable in the core book. So this being an add-on is not bad per se, but it does show like where their focus is. Like they're focusing on like the big places, the fantasy medieval land, the Halloween horror land, just a whole bunch of stuff. And this was going to only be added if they reached a stretch goal. Okay, that's fine. At $225,000, they would include decks of cards for those random events. So no longer would you be rolling on a table, you would have a physical deck of cards to draw a card from, and that would be the random event. Okay? At $250,000 USD, they would make slip cases to go over the hardcover physical books. I cannot stress enough that this is only half of the successful stretch goals that they promised. And these were things that were promised, I believe, when the Kickstarter launched. These were promises that came when they pressed the button go. These were not things they made as the stretch goals were met and they realized, oh shit, we have to make more stuff, as many stretch goals on Kickstarter tend to do. This was literally from the outset the plan of things they were going to produce if they made enough money to do so. They offered at $275,000 more maps of the world and battle maps. I believe the initial plan was to only offer an overview world map of the planet of Neopia and not have any like individual areas. Those would have been only shown off if you met the Bloomaroo Island stretch goal and or bought one of the campaign books, which we will get into. Let me find a bed real quick. Hello people, do you have a bed that I can sleep on? I would like to sleep on a bed so I can skip the night. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Obama. Let's see. You know what? I'm in a safe spot. I'll just stand here for a second and keep talking. Okay. So, expanded map packs. All right. At 300,000, they would include expanded journal packs. Now, I don't believe this was that you would get more journals for your support. It was that when you ordered a journal, you would have more options of what art would be on the outside of that journal. At $325,000, they were going to offer a bespoke dice tray to go along with the bespoke dice. At $350,000, they would include punch sheets with cardboard tokens for various items that you would find in Neopets, as well as for physical props for the Neopoints, the money that you would collect. At $375,000, they would make new dice pouch designs. Again, I don't believe this was saying you will get an extra dice pouch. It was saying when you check out, you will be able to choose a different dice pouch design. And finally, the final Met stretch goal, at $400,000, they would include illustrated card standees of various NPCs from the Neopets franchise. Now, all of this is kind of a lot. There was, however, 2 further stretch goals that were not reached, which means that these were anticipated to have been reached when the Kickstarter went live. That is, additional play modules for $500,000. I don't know if I listed it here, but the game was going to launch with a campaign setting for the Fall of Fairyland storyline, which was a storyline in the original Neopets website that was very popular. Basically, aside Neopets, there is a species that exists in the Neopian world called fairies. They are tall humanoids, always women, with fairy wings and very innate magic, and they are usually themed around an element or aspect of the Neopets website. There's like wind fairies and ice fairies and fire fairies, and that's all fine. But then there are fairies who are around certain mechanics, like the Neg fairy, who is just wild about collecting negs. Then there's the Soup Kitchen Fairy, who is a fairy who runs a soup kitchen. Ah, finally, a bed. Confirm. I have made a mistake, and this is now my respawn point. I have made a mistake, and I have lost track of which direction my house is. Uh-oh. Nah, it's cool. I'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. Worst case scenario, once the stream is over, I can just teleport back to C, and I should be relatively close to home. I could just fix the map, but, you know, whatever. All right. Hey, Tegan! Thank you so much.
I'm sure you'll find your way home.
Thank you so much for the resub. For what you sub for 6 months in advance, Tegan. What the fuck? Well, thank you so much. You get a jolly jangle of the cheer bell. Ahem. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't think C is going to be getting into the bed, unfortunately. I think this is just what I have to live with. Okay, but yes. So, the fairies in Neopets lived on a giant floating island in the clouds. They had a castle, they had buildings, they had a whole society up there. And you could go up there to interact with some fairies, but also to interact with some of the mechanics include painting your Neopets with magical paintbrushes. There was stuff to do up there. Pardon me. You could fix the sleeping when you fix the map. That is very true. That is very true. Sleeping ought to work. Well, actually, hold on a second. I have a compass that you can't see. If I just go north, eventually I'll hit spawn. Maybe, probably. Or go past it entirely. If I hit ice, I'll know I've gone too far. But anyway, in the Fall of Fairyland plot, which was a series of comic strips and interactable events on the main website in 2010 or 11, I think. During a yearly festival in which all the fairies return to Fairyland for singing, dancing, and other magical bullshit, a spell is cast that turns them all to stone. And once they turn to stone, a bunch of shadow monsters show up and it's up to a number of NPCs and, you know, the players to figure out who cast a spell, why they cast a spell, how it can be reversed, and how to prevent the Shadow Beast from literally desiccating the bodies of all Neopets on the website. It was a very popular event. People still refer to the events of that plot as being like key to their understanding of Neopets lore. It was a big deal, and the Kickstarter launched with that adventure being a core campaign to go along with the core rules. It was going to be a separate book from the actual rule book. So technically speaking, the original 40,000 was for 2 full hardcover books, which now that I say it out loud is slightly more realistic, I guess. All right. However, at $500,000 for a stretch goal, they would include, quote, additional play modules. And this is something that bothers me a little bit because due to the nature of the team's experience being 5th edition and Pathfinder, there are some assumptions about all TTRPG play culture that bleeds its way into the Kickstarter and, I believe, the development of the game itself. The additional play modules stretch goal lists, aren't you tired when your players decide to completely derail the campaign that you wrote? Wouldn't you like to have things on those in that area for them to interact without having to think about them? Don't worry, if we reach this stretch goal, you'll have all of these extra campaign options, or these extra play modules to slot in for when those nasty players decide not to listen to you, the DM. And I'm paraphrasing here, it doesn't actually say a quote, but it rubs me the wrong way because the the aggressive DM versus the misbehaving players dynamic is not one that I think is true of most TTRPGs. It's very inherited from playstyles and games that are in the same vein as Gary Gygax's original, very narcissistic experience, intended play experience. And I don't feel like that should be included, but what do I know? I'm just some guy on the internet. All right. Last but not least, at $750,000, they offered online resources. If they reached $750,000 of funding, they would include online resources, which I'm assuming would have included like some form of light VTT, dice rolling, any stuff to be used to run the game digitally. I have opinions on that are not positive. I feel like if you are going to make a game with VTT support, it should be lumped into the initial experience long before you start adding physical doodads. Similar to the disconnect with them offering PDFs as a stretch goal, it speaks to a misunderstanding of what people who buy TTRPGs intend to do with them and how they interact with them. They knew they wanted to make a physical book, and everything else was extra. Tegan says, God, they really did promise a lot. They promised so much. And the timeline of release was that a month after I believe a month after the Kickstarter completed, they would begin producing monsters. No thank you, don't like you at all, don't like you one bit. Okay, you dead? You dead. Neat. PDFs as a stretch goal, so they don't know how publishing works in the first place. Well, we're getting to that, actually, because they promised that plays testing would start within a month of the Kickstarter finishing. Mind you, this was the Kickstarter that they hadn't finished designing. Oh, hey! It's one of these little Quebec ancient guys. I can't talk to him yet. It's not in the game, but it's there. But also that shipping and fulfillment of the hardcover book and all of the backed doodads, the dice trays, the journals, the entire secondary campaign book would be shipped and delivered to backers within 1 calendar year. At a bare minimum, A TTRPG project of that size takes 2 years to complete. That is the rule of thumb. That is if there are no delays. That is if there are no issues. That is if every person in the line of production, from the writers to the editors to the layout artists to the corporations behind them, oh, that's a moose. That's a moose, and I almost tried to beat its ass. It would have killed me. That's if all of those things go 100% swimmingly. Okay, I need to stop traveling at night, apparently, because I don't like these guys. I don't like fighting monsties like this. Go away. Oh, I lost my charge. I accidentally... Oh, I'm gonna die here. I'm dying here. Help. I died. Where do I respawn? Back here. I respawn back here. That's fine. That's fine, I guess. Hi. Hi, I'm glad you're happy to see me. What can I buy from you? A wet berry bush. Interesting. A mushroom skewer. A regular berry bush. What's a wet berry bush do? What's the difference? I don't know. I can't buy Caesar salad, unfortunately. You know what? Let me look at my inventory real quick. Hang on, my good friend. I have plenty of room. Let me go ahead and buy a wet berry bush. There we go. I now own a wet berry bush, and if I ever make it home, I will plant it. A safe haven! Sure, we can go with that. We can go with that. All right. Once again, head north, young Gadda. Head north. Yeah. So not only were they overpromising severely, they were doing it in a time frame that was not realistic for a much smaller project, especially not for one of the scale that they were intending to do. They definitely Dunning-Krugered themselves. Oh, fuck off. I'm talking about Neopets. There we go. Anywho. So, reading all of this, the timeline, the promises, the lack of any concrete information about what the game was actually supposed to play like, I did not back. I did not back at all. I said absolutely not. This is going to be a nightmare, and I do not want to be involved. So I didn't back it, and I kind of low-key forgot about it. All right, you die. You go away. Smart, probably. A number of people did back it, not because they assumed it would turn out good, but because at the very least they would get a book with good Neopets art in it, and some doodads that were Neopets branded, which is fair, but also, ugh. Now then, that promise was that the books would ship summer of 2025. It is now February of 2026. And I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, the first public beta finally was released. The public beta was offered to everyone, not just backers, although backers primarily were the ones who received information. It was released in a Google Doc, with editing permissions turned off, thankfully, but public comments left on, meaning anyone could read the document and share their opinion on it. And people did. A number of designers, people who I respect, got on and started basically offering free work, asking questions, pointing out inconsistencies, describing their distaste with certain things, and describing the implications for what the mechanics that are included imply. You didn't know the comments part. Yes, unfortunately, I'm jumping ahead a bit. After a weekend of people essentially going hog wild in the official comments, the entire document was taken down. The spokesperson for Geekify, who's also the CEO, I believe it's John Taylor, took it down saying, hey, we're going to make some adjustments and we'll talk to you about a beta later. So it is currently not publicly available. They removed it from access from everyone. Even from people who genuinely wanted to play test the game. They no longer have access to it unless they thought to, oh, actually, you know what? I can just steal this. Can I take it? Thank you. I now have a crude bedroll. which I can use to put somewhere a little closer to home and hopefully not have to walk as far if I die again. So yes, I also, there on this point, became a... Oh, nope. Running. No, thank you. Oh, that's a hole. That's a hole. Running. I don't like the swamps. I don't like the swamps. Ow. Are you still after me? Ow. What is hitting me? Is it from a distance? I don't know what's going on. That's a bear. Oh my god, I'm having a very bad day. Farmer Gadda's no good day, apparently. Jesus Christ. If I could find a river, I might be able to just follow it back home. Anyway. No, that's a bear. Fuck me. Alright. This is another safe haven. And I'm going to go ahead and place my thing down. Don't mind if I just sleep in the middle of your encampment. There. All right, what was I saying? Ah, yes, the beta document. A number of designers and editors who I know shared their opinions, be they good or negative, on the state of the game. And frankly, aside from a couple of individuals who I shall not name, who are clearly memeing on the project, most of the responses, even though they were negative responses, were serious critique. They were thought out. They were given in the best light possible. All of the people who were involved in that, except for one or two, who were obviously memeing, were genuinely trying to make the game a better experience. I firmly believe that it was done in as good faith as possible. However, okay, I think this is proof that I've officially gone too far. I've officially gone too far. I'm in the I'm in a forest that is from a northern area. So now what? Fucking now what? I guess I just keep going until I die, and this is the stream now then. Sorry, guys. Yep, Frost Marsh Tundra. Here we are. New location. Where the fuck are you? I would say go west. Rocky says go west. Go west. You know what? If I go west and hit the ocean, I might be able to then find my way back to the island where everyone is making a big bridge to the dinosaur island. Maybe? Southwest, says Rocky. All right, let's go southwest and see what happens. Okay. I participated in the conversation in and around the beta test document. I genuinely tried to do my best, but more importantly for our story and for my involvement, I posted about it on Blue Sky. I posted my opinion in a long thread on Blue Sky, along with reposting a lot of the more memey posts of various people on the website who were looking at the game from a surface level and saying, hey, why the Neopets TTRPG look like that, huh? Explain yourself. One of my posts, which we'll get into what the beta document actually contained, I did include notes on like what was in the document so you can understand why I think it's a bad fit. There is a section that talks about safety tools, or more, it says you should talk with your players to verify what kind of content is acceptable for your table. With that, however, there is a specific line about sexuality, that you should discuss with your players how much sexuality is okay before you fade to black in a Neopets TTRPG. I think that more games should... Hello? Oh. Yeah, fuck off. I think that more games should have serious conversations about safety tools and about allowing people to have more mature experiences at the table. I do not think that the Neopets TTRPG is one where that conversation should be needed, and including it feels very checklist, like someone gave them a list of things that a TTRPG needs, and they went down the line and were marking it off. That post on Blue Sky, where I comment on that particular line, was screenshotted and brought over to Tumblr, where a number of other designers that I respect, including Procopets, saw, interacted with, and responded to that. Not to me directly, but to the sentiment that was in my post at that point in time. This post then made it across the dash of people who actually work at Neopets. I forget their name, but they are apparently one of the internal coders, saw the post with my screenshot and started a whole conversation about the TTRPG, their feelings on it, and essentially, this is what seems to have escalated from just people memeing in a Google Doc to the official Neopets team being made aware that, hey, that TTRPG we licensed, it might not be going as well as they say it is. Oh, here is the base. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Rocky. Always trust Rocky. Rocky, the moral compass, knows where to go. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. During my diatribe, we will get to my thoughts on sexual content as it relates to Neopets and the current Neopets fandom. But yes, on a very base level reading of Neopets, the brand, this is an odd inclusion and one that I don't think really matches the vibes that they think they're going for. But that's, what is with this, all this salt? I did not put this here. Bed, confirm. My spawn is now set to the actual center of the map. Thank God. And from here, I know how to get home, and we can work on my house while I continue talking. But yes. So, Geekify, Geekify, the company, is simply a brand collaboration with the Neopets team, the official Neopets team. They do a lot of manufacturing for Neopets, but they are notably not part of TNT, the Neopets team. They are not legally associated with World of Neopia. They had to pay for the license for Neopets out of the Kickstarter money. Okay? The Neopets team has been spoken to verify that certain lore details or art is acceptable for the Neopets brand, but the TNT is largely hands-off. No one from TNT is on the TTRPG dev team. So the management of the Discord and the Kickstarter has been entirely in Geekify's hands. From what I understand, the Tumblr posts going around and the conversations about it is where TNT became aware of not just the brouhaha, but more specifically of me. The Neopets team knows my name. They may know me as that one guy who thought sex in Neopets was weird on Blue Sky, but they still know me. They know my avatar. I have been perceived. Neopets has liked one of my posts, not in the original thread, just unrelated, which means that at one point they encountered or went onto my my page on Blue Sky to read what I was typing, which is kind of wild and not in a good way. Frankly, I wish none of this had happened. I was just talking to my friends and fellow associates about my opinions about a TTRPG that I kind of wanted to play at some point. I did not intend for it to turn into a whole brouhaha. To be fair, though, I was not like the guy who started all this. You know, I am not responsible. I am just one of many voices on Blue Sky who had things to say about it. And unfortunately, my turn of phrase meant that I am very screenshotable. Also, Neopets now has a Blue Sky account. They did not before this happened. They had a Twitter account, they had a Tumblr account. Neither of them were updated very frequently. But this whole shebang led them directly to making an account on Blue Sky because apparently a lot of people have opinions about Neopets on Blue Sky. So they are there now too. Oops. Accidentally stepping into the Home Alone style trap that is professional posting. Yeah. So anyway, that happened. Let's see, where was I? So now that Neopets, the team, is aware that something is going on, the beta was taken down. The Discord for the official Geekify TTRPG has gone mostly silent. The people who are developing the TTRPG have gone mum, except for their lead, Mr. Taylor of Geekify, John. And we'll talk about the Discord in a bit, but I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's actually in the beta test itself. Okay, let's talk about what's in the beta test itself. Now, the core thing is that a lot of the text is lifted directly from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Not the spirit of the text, not the vibes of the text. The literal text, one-to-one, is copy and pasted from the 5th edition manual. What the fuck is all this? Who put all this shit in my house? Is someone saying that I'm salty? Is someone saying that I am a salty bitch? Because that is correct, but also... oh shit. Salt blocks turn into cobble and then drop salt when you break them? That's weird, but okay, I can live with that. Salt circle to exercise you. Okay, well... if I could be sent back to hell that easily, it would have been done a long time ago. I don't know who's been adding all the salt. Absolutely wild. They pulled the OGL. Well, here's the funny thing. First of all, the Kickstarter explicitly states that they were not going to make a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game because of the OGL debacle that took place back in like 2022. Okay? Secondly, even though actually, hold on a second. Where... I am missing some pieces of wood that I was going to use to fill this hole with, but okay. Let's see. Birch log. I need to do some ceiling work while I chit chat. So let's do some ceiling work. What was I saying? Yes. Not only did they publicly state they were not using the OGL, when the document initially went live, it included no legal text that referenced the fact that they were using Wizards of the Coast's work. Wizards of the Coast has put the 5th edition SRD into public domain as share-alike, CC by 4.0. You are required by law, if you pull anything from that document, to state what you pulled, what you changed, and include legalese to allow people who read it who don't know to understand that, oh, they didn't write this, they're editing or hacking something that was written by Wizards of the Coast. You are legally required. That legal writing was not in the document until a member of the Discord pointed out, hey, you guys are breaking the law, at which point it was very quickly edited. Edits to the document is also a thing. The document was apparently a live document because as people started making critiques of things, things were removed. The big one included an entire section called perks. Perks are essentially feats, but they have been renamed, and they are point buy. So instead of receiving experience, you receive level up points, which can be spent as a resource on a number of things. Arguably, I don't believe this is actually in the text, but it's implied, stat increases, and features. The entire perks tab was blank when the document originally released, except for a statement which read that the work in this tab had not been paid for by John of Geekify. The dev who was supposedly meant to write that section removed it before the document went live to claim that they had not been receiving compensation for their work. Now, to be fair, there has been an official response by John Taylor of Geekify. I'm pretty sure his last name is Taylor. I might be getting that wrong. Stating that this was a dispute with a contractee who misunderstood their contract. Other individuals who were under the same contract have come forward stating that they were paid according to the contract and that the whole thing was in fact a misunderstanding. However, elsewhere in the document, there was a similar statement claiming that John Taylor of Geekify had not read the document, did not understand the mechanics that were in the document, and also would repeatedly request additions and changes to the document without, again, understanding what was in the document, which unfortunately rings a bit true, specifically because there are many references to the perks tab throughout the document. The perks tab that was empty except for an angry message claiming that they had not been paid. So it does add credence to the claim that at least John, who was responsible for this document being sent out, does not actually read the work that the people he is contracted are doing. There is arguably less than great oversight. Okay? So let me tell you what's actually in this document now that I have gone on about the problems with it. First of all, there are ability scores. This is pretty standard. You have things like strength, defense, will. I probably should have written down the specific ones. There is a magic stat, which, okay, fair enough. The issue is that all of these stats pull double duty. The strength stat is not just for your physical fitness, but also for the force of your personality. The magic stat is used for a number of things, and essentially anything involving magic whatsoever. There is an interesting attempt to make stats pull double duty, but I do not think it lands well. This means that if you have a Neopet who mechanically has a very high strength score, your Neopet will also automatically roll really well at any attempts to intimidate or convince or essentially lie. You could argue that strength should be used for lying. Okay? This does not ring true to the argument that you can restat and make your Neopet whatever you want it to be. It's a little off. It's a little off. It's a little weird. And this becomes more difficult because while they have combined stats to couple up and arguably simplify how ability scores work, this game also includes skill checks, which are more niche things. And with skill checks, there are things like Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Performance, Sleight of Hand. You can have proficiency in a skill check, which I'll talk about proficiency in a second. But those skills do not have a stat tied to them. There are suggestions for what stat you are meant to roll for an ability check. I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong words. The base number is an ability score, which can go from 1 past like 400. That's another thing, by the way. The incremental stat gain for your ability scores is insane. And there is a dice scale where once you reach a certain number, the die you roll for that ability score goes up. Initially, you roll a d4. And then when your ability score gets to, I want to say like 40 or something, you upgrade that ability score to rolling a d6. And this goes up to a d20. Okay? But the ability scores themselves can go way high. This is an emulation of how stats work on the Neopets website, where the stats do balloon into like 4,000 per stat. But that is with a combat engine that is meant to use them to calculate damage output and defense input. It is not for a D20 game, which I would argue does not do well when numbers get that big, but what do I know? Let's see, what else? The list of skill checks have suggested ability scores that you should use to roll them, meaning that you will be, I'll say this nicely, arguing or debating with your DM what die you're even supposed to roll when they call for a check. Now, in the base document, there are suggestions. These are not meant to be 100% you're not allowed to do anything else. But in the document, the magic stat specifically is suggested for Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Performance, and Sleight of Hand checks. It is the only ability score that is tied to that many skill checks. All of the others show up in maybe 3 or 4, which, you know, they make sense where they're suggested, but magic is very much a catch-all, which is not ideal. This essentially means that if you have a high magic stat, you can just win the game. This is obviously, tables will season this to taste. This doesn't necessarily mean that every table will automatically make magic stat the meta. But once you have in your mechanical system an obvious win button, it's like putting a pig next to a waller and expecting it to stay clean. Like, players are going to go for what is mechanically optimal. And if you are going to make a game where there is a mechanically optimal option, you really should ask yourself if that is what you intend to be in the design. The second thing you must ask yourself is, how much effort am I willing to put in to prevent that situation, or do I just have to trust my audience to figure out if that's what they want their table to do? I do not think that this consideration was made for the Neopets TTRPG specifically. Let's see, what else here? Oh, there's also a number of points in the document where the document will, how do I word this? Earlier in a document, it'll say, this thing works this way. And then much later in the document, they'll say, actually, this thing works a different way. And one of those is group checks. First of all, when they initially describe a group check, which is a thing where multiple people are attempting to succeed at an object, right? Every player who is participating will pool their individual die, and the numbers will be added up to reach a difficulty ceiling, a difficulty check, right? Which I didn't write down here. No. But the difficulty checks, for those of you who don't play TTRPGs and don't know, difficulty checks is essentially where a DM picks a number based on how hard they think the thing you're trying to do should be. And if you meet or beat that number by rolling a die, then yes, you do that in the fiction. The DCs that are listed start from a DC of 2 for easy and go up to a DC of 10, which is listed as basically impossible. Now, for a game that expects you to be rolling D4s and D6s for a large chunk of the experience until you level up and start reaching higher numbers, that kind of makes sense. However, a DC of 2 is basically a 50-50 chance roll on if you're using the absolute weakest stat a Neopet can have in this system. At which point, the DM really should be saying, does it make sense for this to happen, yes or no, and going off of that. A roll should not really be needed if that is going to be the situation we're dealing with. And once you start rolling a d20, a DC of 2 is literally like you have a 10% chance of failing that. After a certain point, some things just should be automatic. The system does not account for this, and I personally, as an individual, think that is not good design. People may argue with me, and I'm trying to be as nice as possible and not be too much of a stuck-up snob, but I think that that's what it is. So anyway, a group check, essentially, is stated as being a dice pool where everyone who is participating rolls their die and then the result is added together, okay? Now again, when you are rolling with multiple people, oh, this is gonna be a problem, isn't it? I don't think I can do this. I'm gonna have to get a different slope for this part of the roof, I think. That's fine. I can do that though. I do have the basic roof here that I can use. Yeah, I like that. And then I'll just have a flat roof piece to go straight. Yeah, flat roof, as I hold my beer in the alley. Yeah, Rocky's just like commenting on my building process, like, yeah, if you do this, then you can like, but no, I do appreciate the effort. I am gonna have to spend some time getting up into these rafters and adding some slabs to smooth this roof out, but I really like how it's looking, actually. But yes, again, if you have 4 players, right, and you are doing a dice pool, and they're all rolling a d4, there is mathematically no possible way for them to not succeed. At that point, if you are having them roll for a DC of 2 or even 4, with 4 being the standard difficulty, if everyone works together on it, they just do it. This feels strange to me and not well thought out. Specifically when it comes to the math. Their desire to emulate Neopets the website while having it be in what is arguably still a D20 system, it bites them in the butt. And I worry on that very basic basis alone, because this is the basic resolution system, guys. Like, this isn't even like a mechanic that you could play and ignore and never interact with. This is the basic action of rolling the die. There are issues with the resolution. So it's not great. It's not looking great, frankly. Add some birch logs. I want to ride my bicycle. No, I want like 30 of these and maybe 20 of those for now. I think that'll be enough. Better do 10 more of each. I've got a big roof, and I'm not very good at determining how much material I need for any given thing. There we go. Now, how the fuck do I get up there? Later in the book, they describe group checks again. Only this time, right? Only this time, everyone rolls against the DC. Everyone rolls their individual dice. Only this time, as long as one person succeeds, the whole group succeeds. We are no longer adding. And that is slightly better. However, I do still have to wonder, what limitations are there on quote-unquote helping with a roll? Can every roll be done as a group check to further the chances that the whole team succeeds at a thing? There are questions I have about this that the document is incapable of answering. Again, just concerns about whether people who wrote this have actually, like, seriously thought this through, or, to be less nice, have the experience to foresee any of these problems as being problems in the first place. Oh, you I have to get rid of. And then alley-oop. There we go. Okay. Another mechanic they introduce is carrying capacity. Based on your strength, there's like a little algorithm, a little math problem. You can carry objects up to a certain weight. All right? This is common in 5th edition, although mostly people will hand wave it. There is technically a gate on the objects you are able to carry on your person. However, separately, all Neopets start with an inventory of 50 items. This is to emulate the website where you start off with an inventory of 50 items. If you would acquire or purchase a 51st item, the game warns you, hey, your bag is full. You got to do something with it. You either got to put it into your store if you're going to sell it. You got to put it into your gallery if it is for showing off to others. You can't just carry everything around at all times. The Neopets game, TTRPG, says you have to worry about how heavy things are, but also you have 50 items that you can carry at all times. This is a mismatch of game expectations. I questioned if this meant that carrying capacity was just for objects you have equipped, like armor and weapons, and your inventory is essentially like a cartoon bag that you can swap things out as long as it's within your maximum of things to carry. But the document doesn't really describe that, unfortunately. Pull myself up here. Oh, I do not have enough lightwood roofs for this. I did not prepare enough lightwood roofs. Okay. It's also getting dark, and you guys can't see shit. So I should probably go ahead and drop down and get some EP sleep. Geronimo. Ow. Okay. So, there's a contradiction there as well. There's also some things that I genuinely feel like just need some slimming down. For example, the game has armor class, but also resistance class. Armor class, historically, is simply a check to determine whether or not an enemy can hit you. They will roll with your armor class as their difficulty, and if they roll over it, then they make contact with you. Magic defense, in my experience, tends to be more passive and simply removes damage from magic effects. This is such a stark thing. Like, how was this little work done by a whole team? It makes me feel better about my personal game output. So there are rumors that I want to tack onto the end of the discussion as opposed to like in the beginning, because they are just rumors. But various people have come forward stating that they were part of or had access to earlier drafts of this game. This game, presumably, reportedly, anecdotally, is the result after a previous draft was completely scrapped from a group of people leaving the team and taking their work with them. For whatever reason, the contracts or organization that they had people under when they started work on the project did not include specifically that the work done for it belonged to the Neopets or Geekify, and therefore the writers took it and left. Again, this is unsubstantiated. This is reported from people who claim they worked on the project on places like Reddit or Blue Sky. I have personally connections who I trust who claim that they know people individually, personally, but like they also don't want those people to be blacklisted forever for speaking out. Apparently, no one was forced to sign an NDA, according to one of these reports, which means that while they feel that they can speak about it openly, they don't feel as though they can reveal their specific identity or the work they did because it would identify them to the team, and they don't want that to happen. They don't want to burn those bridges, even though the end result of this project was not good for them. But yes. There are also, as a part of the lifting of language directly from 5th edition, a lot of references to things that are not part of Neopets. The list here, okay? The beta document references dark vision, tremor sense, true sight. It includes hex crawl mechanics like food and water and timekeeping and overland travel, similar to 5th edition, which arguably was written with the intent of being used for hex crawls back when it was written in 2014. I have a whole diatribe about the history of 5th edition and the OSR, but we won't get into that here. But those mechanics that are ignored by most modern 5e players are present in the Neopets document because they are present in 5th edition, the book. There is a large implication that the Neopets setting is a series of structural societies that are safe and protected and where you go to do society things, but then the world around it is a vast, dangerous wilderness. In design circles, this is referred to as the points of light design, which was a large selling point of 4th edition and later 5th edition, as the world being wild and untamed and full of monsters, except for the places of the bastions of safety that you could build if you went out and tamed the world. This implication is mentioned a couple of times in the beta document and does not reflect the reality of the Neopian world. There are uncharted lands and there are dangerous places to go and monsters to fight in the Neopets website. However, the majority of locations in Neopets have shit like indoor plumbing and cell phones. The main city, the first city, Neopia itself, is like a modern early 2000s world. They have the internet, they have the stock market, they have vehicles. My OBS just froze for some reason, and I'm desperately hoping that y'all can still hear me. I'm just gonna keep talking, because last time it still went fine, Note to self, if it didn't go find points of light. They heavily reference the fact that Neopets join together in something called a party and travel as a group across the land. No, they don't. They do not do that. That is not a thing that is like core to the Neopets experience. That is Dungeons and Dragons. I bear witness to the voice of Farmer Gadda. Fantastic. Okay. Oh, now Hightail is frozen on my end. Okay. This is doing great. Fantastic. As long as you all can still hear me, that is fine. Let's see here. So, implication of a party system. The individual Neopets, the species of Neopets, there are 55 of them, okay? Similar from 5th edition, your race increases your ability scores, denotes your size in mechanical terms, how fast you are, and what languages you know. While individual Neopets do have like scales of size they can be at, there is no set specifics about what a Neopet can or cannot be. That is malleable. That is up to the player to train their Neopet in certain things. I have an Ixie, right, who is super smart because I exclusively read him books, okay? My Kugra has ridiculously good HP, not because of anything innate to Kugra's, but because back when I played on that account, I trained her HP almost exclusively so I would have a buffer for other stats later on, because running out of HP before I could get a hit in was my main priority. The actual Neopets experience is a lot more malleable, and the way that the races are currently set up is just a mirror of how 5th edition does their bioessentialism, which I do not agree with as being a core part of the Neopets experience. Also, languages. There have been a couple of noted languages that some species can speak only because of their biology, or they speak culturally, but everyone speaks Neopian. Like there's no such thing as a mechanical communication barrier in the mechanics of the Neopets website. They're just neat things you can mention as part of the lore. Let's see here. Spells are lifted directly from 5th edition, to the point where some of the names are just slightly altered to replace D&D NPCs with known Neopets NPCs. The spells also, though they are called powers, spells also have verbal, material, and somatic requirements for their spells. They include things like timed durations, concentration, spell shapes. This does not match how spells work in Neopets. Honestly, how magic and spells work in Neopets is very loosely defined, but they are not Vancian casting systems. That is not a thing. However, this exists in the document because, again, 5th edition. There is a mechanic for donning and doffing your armor requiring a certain amount of physical time, which, again, when you have 50 items in your inventory, and you're also going to spend action points to swap items out, this goes against the stated intent of the game, but that's neither here nor there. The gear section, the items section. Not all Neopets even have hands. Tegan, I did not include this in my notes, but there is a 2-paragraph section for grappling rules, Tegan. And the grappling rules, because they are lifted from 5th edition, assume that all players are humanoid, able-bodied people with 2 hands and 2 arms, preferably attached to each other. In order to clear this over, again, this is not in my notes, but I'm saying it now because you brought it up. A Neopet species, which does not have hands, that only has 2 feet and is a puffball, is given the racial ability, the Hand of Jub, which allows them to telekinetically interact with an object as if they have hands. Now, Blue Sky and myself read Hand of Jub and shortened it to Hand Jub, which is something any editor would have caught upon reading it twice. I'm going to have to completely reload Hightail because this is not working. I thought it would fix itself, but it is not. Any editor would have caught that, and everyone who read it actually did catch that and went, hey, what's going on here? What's happening here? Who thought this was a good idea? Anyone? Please tell me you thought this was a good idea. But you see my issue, right? Ignoring the fact that, like, oh, update 3 is out. That's probably why Hytale is giving me a hard time. I have to launch the previous version now. Amazing. Yeah, okay. There are implications of combining the play style and experience of 5th edition with the intended setting of Neopets that you kind of have to think, like, if someone has a dirty mind, how easy will it be for them to completely fucking break this? There is rules for drowning, which, as Sam Sorensen so succinctly put it in the comments, means that there is now textual canonical rules for waterboarding a Kugra. They included drowning rules. You can take those and turn them around and waterboard a Neopet. That is a thing that you can do without homebrewing the rules as written in the officially licensed Neopets TTRPG. Okay? This is an issue I have, not just with 5th edition, but with Elf games as a whole, right? There is nothing inherently wrong about playing a role-playing game where you are an elf and you go out and you loot and plunder, right? If you are playing a game that is a combat simulator and you say to your friends, we are playing the combat simulator game. Also, I have no stream title. Jesus Christ. Well, I updated the stream title, so hopefully that'll fix it. Fuck me. Let me log onto the server and pull the notes back up. There is not a, there is, the play experience itself is not a moral argument. However, if you are going to play in a system that is designed to be the murder and loot system, you can say you're playing a kind and gentle and friendly friendship simulator, but you're not. You cannot take the design intent of the original system and simply transpose it to a different experience. You either need to severely alter the base core assumptions of the system you're using, or you need to play a different game. A lot of D&D players do have wonderful times playing quote-unquote Dungeons and Dragons, where they go shopping and they, kiss a guy and they open up a flower shop. But that is despite the stated mechanics of the game, not because they are actually playing the game as it was written. If you are ignoring rules because they don't match your play experience, then you are not actually playing the game. And now, this is not meant to be being like, oh, you're not playing the game right. This is like an objective issue where you are using a screwdriver for a hammer's job. A system does what it's designed to do. The system also is what the system does. Why is this not working as intended? Okay. Can I not put them sideways like this? Oh, does there have to be a block below? Is that the issue? If I break this... No, you stay. Do I have to be underneath you to place you? I do. Well, that's not great, but I can live with it. Can I reach from this angle? Yes. Oh, but now they're rotating the wrong way. That's fine. I'll fix that later. I am having a grand time with these blocks. Right. Anyway. So that's like the main disconnect. That's all the stuff they listed from 5th edition. Oh, actually, no, it's not. I forgot. So, items are a big part of Neopets. You have 50 item slots. All of your food are items. All of the collectibles are items. Interacting with the inventory is like the #1 thing you do when you are playing Neopets. You acquire items, you buy items, you sell items, all of your weapons and stuff are items, your pets are items. It's a whole thing, right? We get to the gear spec of the book. The gear is, again, lifted from 5th edition. It includes things like abacuses and bottles of acid and arcane focuses that are needed to cast your spells. wands exist in Neopets, potions exist in Neopets, but they don't exist like this. This is a very unexpected manner of dealing with this. It doesn't match the fantasy that they are trying to create. It only exists because it's in 5th edition. All of the prices are just converted from gold into a vaguely equivalent Neopoints amount, and that's it. All of the items that you can acquire in the beta version of the game are just the 5th edition items from Dungeons and Dragons. All right. Let's talk about, however, let's talk about what they do add that is not in 5th edition. Okay? Because there are some changes. There are some things that are in there that I'm like, this is good as an add-on to 5th edition if you're going to adjust it. And I have been told that other systems like Nimble 5e do in fact do some of these things. So this is where the Pathfinder comes into play. Okay? The mouse isn't moving because I'm like gesturing with my hands, forgetting that I'm supposed to be playing a video game at the same time. My apologies. Anyway, I think 10 is all I really need for right now. First of all, stamina points are a thing. Instead of using a spell slot system, all powers use stamina points, which is a resource that is regained at the end of a long rest. Long resting is a thing, by the way. They remove short rests entirely, which is a design choice that I don't think I would make for 5th edition, knowing what 5th edition is about. But like, to each their own. They've already gone past what I would do as Farmer Gadda. So like, whatever, that's fine. Arguably, stamina points will also be tied into the stress system. They have a stress system, by the way. The stress system is a chart that goes from 0 to 5, okay? Your stress begins at 2. When you accrue stress, either from being in what the book describes as a stressful situation or from starting an attack, I guess, your stress increases. When your stress is between 1 to 3, there's no effect. Nothing extra happens as a result of your stress being like that. Once your stress reaches 4, you acquire what is called desperation. Desperation is not really a resource. It's more of like when you reach critical in Pokemon and the button starts going doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. It's a note that like, hey, things are getting bad for you. This is separate from HP, by the way. This has nothing to do with HP. When you have desperation, whenever you roll your die and you roll a 1, you gain stress. So this is like a spiraling thing where if you are already stressed, if you're already desperate, already near the end, the max of stress you can get, and you don't lower that stress before you roll a 1, that 1 tips you over the edge and you reach 5. At 5, once you have 5 stress, all rolls are at disadvantage. Now, you will note that being at 5 stress does not lower your die size, which is what being proficient at things does. It gives you disadvantage, which means you roll your dice twice and choose the lower amount. And this remains until you clear the effect of being desperate by having your stress being at 5, until you lower it to 4 or beyond. Well, that may as well just happen, I suppose. All right. Conversely, you start at 2 stress. If you can lower your stress to 0, you increase your die size, which is the exact opposite of what being at 5 stress does. Do you see what I'm saying when I'm saying that's contradictory? It has 2 different mechanics for arguably similar purposes, and it cannot make up its mind when to use either of them. The document includes them both. To my knowledge, stress does not tie in to any other mechanic. There apparently are going to be powers that automatically increase stress, so stress is like a trade-off for doing things that are difficult. Arguably, we don't know, because again, the perks section was apparently not paid for, so we don't know what the perks even look like. We do not know how to remove stress, but apparently initiating combat is enough to gain stress. So getting into a fight is it starts off with a negative repercussion, just for the sake of you being part of it. We'll get into that in a bit later. I've been talking for a long time. Am I making sense? Does everyone who has been here for, Jesus Christ, 2 hours understand what my issue with this system is? Do I sound like a guy who's just hating on things? Or do I sound like someone who has an actual point and critique and is addressing them succinctly? Do I sound like I'm a hater? Because I don't want to be a hater, is the thing. I just do not think this system is very good. It has issues. Kind of, but I'm at work, so I'm only half listening. Kind of to which, Aya? Kind of to which? All right. Thank you for assuring me, people who I know personally and who care about me, and who are therefore not biased in any way. Kind of makes sense. Okay. Let's see here. The game also includes action points, which is something that is taken... you are expressing love and passion. I've been following along. Thank you, Dragon. It includes action points, which is essentially how Pathfinder handles turns. You gain 3 action points at the start of your turn, and you can spend those action points to do a number of actions. Attacking costs 1 action point. Using a power costs 1 action point. Using your movement speed costs an action point per type of movement speed you're using, by the way. So if you wanted to run, then fly, then run again, you would have to spend 3 action points. Oh, but wait. If you want to do the same thing twice, it costs an action point more the second time. So if you wanted to attack, it would cost 1 action point. If you wanted to attack again, well, that time, it costs 2 action points. And if you only have 3 action points, that's the end of your turn. This is how Pathfinder does it, although there is some additional math involved where attacks that you do more than once in a turn actually do less damage. So you're not just like doing bam, 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 the same amount of damage every time you attack. I quite like this, and in a 5th edition style game, a Pathfinder 2nd edition game, that makes sense. It's the kind of crunch that I like. So I'm not against Neopoints aping this. They do not include the descending damage output, however, which does alter how action points work in play. I'm just gonna go ahead and craft 10 of these. Why not? All right. However, this raises another problem, right? Because I've talked about stamina points. I've talked about action points. The currency is called Neopoints. When you succeed at something, you gain level up points. The naming convention uses the same phrase for multiple different things. And while I'm following, I can only imagine that a child, or even someone who's not used to TTRPGs as an adult and wants to pretend to be a Neopet, will get a little confused by all the different kinds of points they have to keep track of. If they could have changed Neopoints to coins, that would alleviate it some. If they switched level points to experience, maybe, but that, again, that would require people to already know how TTRPGs work. There's just some branding issues going on here, which I think could be ironed out. Yeah, the level up points instead of experience, again, I stated earlier, when you receive a level up point, you can trade those 1-for-1 for stat increases and perks, although we do not currently know what perks look like because, again, that part wasn't paid by John Taylor of Spotify. I love that meme so much. I love just saying the thing over and over. Wasn't paid for by John Taylor of Spotify. It's very memeable, and that's why it's spread so far. Okay? Death. There are, I want to say, 4 to 6 paragraphs describing death mechanics in the Neopets TTRPG. And this is very jarring because on the website itself, Neopets never die. It doesn't matter if you haven't fed them for 20 years, they will say they're dying, but once you give them an omelet, they're fine again. There is no serious negative repercussions to not caring for a Neopet for taking a hiatus or being away for a while. There just isn't, okay? There is, however, canonical character death and dying in the comic book lore which is like a whole point in and of itself. So there is a disconnect between what people who played Neopets as a website expected and people who have played Neopets as a long-term, like, I don't want to say lifestyle, because that sounds negative, but like the super fans who know all the lore, what they expect from Neopets is different. Death includes death saving throws, that's fine, yada yada. However, because Neopets is an interesting setting, ghosts work differently in Neopets. When you die, the rule set implies that becoming a ghost is an option. Doesn't say how you become a ghost, but there are additional paragraphs spent for how ghosts work. Your ghost can talk to and interact with the physical world. However, you are forever tied to your inventory pouch. I do not have any more wood, so I'm gonna have to make some saplings and grow them real quick so I can get more wood to finish my roof. You are tied to your inventory pouch until that pouch is destroyed. Once a character dies, they can be revived by a very specific mechanic, which is the paintbrush. In Neopets, the website, paintbrushes are mystical artifacts that can be bought or sold, and using them on your Neopet permanently morphs that Neopet biologically to be the color and style of that paintbrush. Some are simple, like if you want your green Neopet to be blue, you paint them and they have blue fur now. They just have that forever. However, there are themed paintbrushes that come with biological changes. Your Neopet might grow extra spikes and turn dark purple and evil looking if they have a Darrigan paintbrush. They'll turn into a pastel color and they'll grow fairy wings if you paint them with a fairy paintbrush. There are biomechanical results of using paintbrushes on your Neopet. The estrogen paintbrushes don't get me started on how they force-femmed my cat. When they adjusted all the art to make for the new dress-up mechanic back in like 2007, all female Neopets suddenly got like eyelashes, because otherwise how would you know they're a girl? That's okay, sure, whatever, man, whatever floats your boat, I guess. So they force-femmed my cat. In the TTRPG, during the death and dying section, they specify that if the ghost of your Neopet is painted with a paintbrush, the ghost becomes that Neopet. Because Neopets can become ghosts with the ghost paintbrush. That is just a thing in base Neopets. So the implication is, one, that when you die and become a ghost, you are dead, but also the ghost can be converted back into a living being separate from the body of their original corpse if you have a paintbrush on you. Conversely, although the TTRPG doesn't have any mechanics for this, it does imply that if you were to get a ghost paintbrush in the TTRPG and use it on your Neopets, it is contextually a form of suicide. Now, does Neopets, the website, want to interact with these implications? No, absolutely not. That is not a thing. Like, they don't talk about it. In a TTRPG, where your players have free reign to do and say whatever they want, if there is an inconsistency that makes them question the reality of the world, they're going to question it, and they're going to try and follow that up. This is at the absolute best. This TTRPG is going to be a blunt object to the back of the head of Neopets as a brand. This is a danger to the brand image of Neopets, which, while it does contain mature-er content and storylines on its websites, also markets itself as a cute pastel and neon website for your 5-year-old or so, you have to be 13 to play the game, but whatever, to go on and play with a fictional pet, and oh look, you can buy plushies and t-shirts. And yeah, maybe half our audience are in their 30s and are experiencing severe back pain, but don't you remember the joy of being a child when things were simpler and the world was not so gray, you know? Like, that's what they market themselves as, and that is not what this TTRPG is positioned to do. I already mentioned the sexuality. which I do want to get into. But let's talk about the pets real quick. Because you remember me talking about pets, how having a pet, which is essentially just an item that is fictionally a living thing, but is an item no different from anything else in your inventory. Wildly, this is making me want to play Flight Rising again. I'll be honest, playing Neopets over the last couple of weeks has been great. I'm really enjoying myself. The website is still broken in many places, but what is fixed up and what remains from my memory is still an enjoyable experience, even if I no longer engage with the internet the same way that people did when Neopets was popular. But yes, pets, okay? I mentioned that in Neopian lore, pets are like wild animals. The domesticated animals are the ones that you give to your pet as a friend. But there are some wild pets that get super big or are obstacles in other ways. There's the Snowager, which is a massive ice snake that has a horde of gold and stuff, and you can try and steal from him, but you run the risk of waking him up and him attacking you. There's the Turmoculus, which is a big Snorlax kind of figure who just kind of sleeps all day. And if you have your pet interact with them, your pet might get eaten. He might wake up and go, oh, a snack, and then eat your pet. So there is precedence for pets being wild animals. However, there is still a difference between the ones that are wild and the ones that are domesticated, and those are the pets that you interact with on a mechanical basis on the website. Pets are Pokemon, except you fight them with your own fists in the TTRPG. The rules for pets are that they will appear as random encounters. Fairly frequently, they will be inherently violent. They are treating them like goblins, essentially. Goblins in 5th edition, right? If they see you, they will attack you because they are wild. If you wish to tame one, you can do so. However, you must first beat the pet down to 0 health points and choose not to kill it. You must choose non-lethal damage when fighting a pet that you want to keep as a pet. You must then go through a ritual of offering it food or something to convince it that actually, even though we just beat the shit out of you, I'm nice and you should be my friend. After which, it is essentially like a beast friend in 5th edition, where they act on the same turn as you. You can command it to attack or do simple things, and they essentially are just like a mount at that point, okay? You're only allowed to have one pet at once, and this got to me. There is a specific line that states, should a Neopet die, the pet will switch into defending their owner's corpse, regardless of the damage it would do to them. At all costs, they will stand guard over the corpse of your Neopet until either killed themselves or the party members attend to the corpse. That is not me. That unlike the waterboarding a cougar thing, this is not me connecting 2 dots. This is textually stated in the text of the document. It is very dark, it is very out of left field, and it does not match the fantasy of Neopia that I or many other people expected. So, with all of that said, all right, were there things that the Neopets TTRPG Kickstarter promised that they did actually follow up on? Okay? Yes, but like with big asterisks, okay? So, separate from choosing your species of Neopet, you can have different colors of Neopet. They promised that there would be regional variants and that you would be able to play as them. The colors that are available in the base document are very basic. However, each color, how do I word this? Colors are where you get proficiencies from. Remember that I mentioned that proficiencies mean that if you are proficient in a skill, the die you roll for that skill is increased by 1 size. So if you have a D6 in your strength stat and you want to roll intimidation, and you're proficient in intimidation because of your color, you can roll a D8 instead. It goes up 1 size of die. All right, that's perfectly fine. The colors also give you affinities, which in this TTRPG is all of the different fairy elements. So fire, light, water, earth. They've added a new one that isn't on the website called life, which is different from earth in a way that I can't really parse myself. And these affinities work kind of like Pokemon types, where receiving damage from certain affinities is altered based on what your affinity is and the affinities of like your armor and whatnot. So your base affinities are based by your color. However, some colors also include their own unique mechanics. For lootables in particular, the gold color gives you more Neo points. You can roll a 1d10 and add that to the Neo points you are awarded whenever you acquire Neo points. So if you did a quest and you got 500 Neo points, right, and you rolled a d10 and multiplied that by 10, you would actually get 600 Neo points just because you're a different color than the rest of your friends. That is interesting, sort of, but I also worry when we get into the more exotic colors that do things like turn you into the ghost, turn you into a pirate, turn you into a fairy. How are the colors going to tie into the rest of your stats? And also, if you change the color of your pet, you lose these benefits. So if you have a color that is going to alter your HP, and then you change it, or even further than that, if you change your species, suddenly your HP has to be readjusted entirely. Your strength has to be adjusted. Any proficiencies that came from your physical being has to be adjusted because this game wants you to be able to constantly change your physical being. Again, one of the promises was that you could respec frequently at the behest of the DM. Nothing was mutable about your Neopet. But if every minor change you make is going to require you to recalculate your entire character sheet, that's going to be something that players aren't going to want to do. That is going to cause friction for the desired attempt of what the system wants to happen versus what the players are actually going to attempt to do once they get it into their hands. There's a term that is bandied around that I can't think of in the moment, but like, yeah, dysphoric stat rebuilding. There is, I don't want to use the word dysphoria, but there is a dyssynergy, I suppose, between the stated aims of the system and what the system actually rewards you for doing. Having to redo your entire character sheet if you transform from like a cheek into a Kugra and then change your color from blue to green is going to make people not want to do those things after the first time they do it. It's going to be a hassle. It's going to be a chore. And that's not good. That's not good. The TTRPG Kickstarter promised professions, and technically, those exist in the game. They are now listed as being backgrounds. Instead of being something that you acquire or become, as implied by the professions in the Kickstarter, backgrounds work more like they do in 5th edition, where they are essentially like a quick overview of your backstory, what you were doing before play started. So backgrounds give you starting items based on your background. They give a minor boon to specific scenarios. So for example, one of the backgrounds, I forget the exact name of it, but it's like a fashionista. Like you're Rarity from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, where you sew, you design, you work on clothes. And the bonus you get for having that background, aside from some objects that you would naturally have, you have like some fabric, you have some sewing scissors, stuff that you would expect a character of that type to have, you also know the make of any cloth you touch. That is entirely a roleplay thing. I think that is actually really neat. That is something that I read and went, okay, I like that. There's an MLP TTRPG? Buddy, there's like 3 of them. Only one of them is official. And unfortunately, that one is also based on 5th edition. Don't get me started on that. Yeah, real quick though. Okay. Hasbro owns Transformers, Power Rangers, My Little Pony, and G.I. Joe. And a studio that works under them, Renegade 20, was told to make 5th edition splat books for those for those properties. However, during development, even though Hasbro also owns Wizards of the Coast, Renegade are independent? Oh, okay. I assume they were like officially under the umbrella. Yes, during development, it was decided by Hasbro, not by Renegade 20, actually, that it should be its own, air quotes, own system. So very similar to the Neopets TTRPG, while things are not lifted, it is still very clearly based in 5th edition. The mathematics of it and just the mechanics of how play is expected to go is still very 5th edition. Unfortunately, one of the other mandates was that all 4 games had to be cross-compatible. So there is... So I've talked about the Power Rangers RPG, right? I do not think that Power Rangers is good for 5th edition. If they had made a splat book to add Power Ranger things to 5th edition, that'd be a little more acceptable. That's kind of where I'm at with Neopets right now. This TTRPG should have been a splat book that adds in Neopet flavored things to 5th edition for 5th edition players who are also Neopets fans. This is not a TTRPG that is good at emulating what Neopets is. So because they were using it based off of a 5th edition chassis or an Elf game chassis, Power Rangers, 5th edition. My Little Pony, 5th edition. G.I. Joe and Transformers gets away a little better, in my opinion. I've read the Transformers TTRPG, and I feel that the rules that are clearly 5th edition based work a bit better because Transformers, while it is about giant colorful robots becoming cars, is also very much a war story. Like, if you are a Transformers fan, you know that, like, it's good versus evil, but it's very much also about, like, the horrors of war, but everyone who's fighting is usually a giant robot on a sci-fi planet. Similarly with G.I. Joe, I have read many a D20-based system that tries to make, like, modern warfare, so it's not all medieval fantasy, and some work better than others. And in that vein, I feel like the G.I. Joe game makes a little more sense. Similarly, because all 4 of these properties are meant to cross over, there is official Essence 20 products that have on the cover a Transformer, a guy in the military, a Power Ranger, and a cartoon pony going on the same adventure together in a crossover event. That is a desired outcome of the Essence 20 system. So yeah, I guess I did go on a tangent on Essence 20 anyway. I don't think it's good for any of those brands, and for some, like My Little Pony and Power Rangers, the base game alones are not very good. They're okay at best. So, you know, that's a whole thing. What was I talking about? Backgrounds. Yeah. So, unlike as implied by the Kickstarter, professions are not a thing you can become unless you hand-wave away with role-playing. They are background. They are what you were before the game started. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just feels like they made a promise for something, realized they weren't able to fully realize it, and this is them fulfilling that promise in name only. I do like how they do backgrounds, honestly, to be fair. I also like how backgrounds are done in the Power Rangers Essence 20. They tie them to the individual colors, and the bonuses that you would normally get from just your species are spread across the background and color you choose. Like, I like that. This is an interesting idea of having very specific and niche prompt-based results depending on who your Neopet is as a person and what they value. I do like that. That is positive. I like that. However, we then get into personality, and this is something that is actively being worked on in the Discord, so I feel like this is the one thing that they did not feel confident on when they put the beta out to the world, because this is still clearly being worked on. I feel like they should have felt less confident in other things in this document, but that's neither here nor there. I've already been talking for 2.5 hours at this point on what I feel they should have been less confident on. Personalities are more like prompts for players to know how to play their character. Instead of having a mechanical bonus, it is simply listed on your sheet that your character is this. so that when you play them, if you're not sure how your character will react, you can look at your sheet and be like, oh, my character is affable. So I should play him as being kind of lucky, I'm thinking of a term, happy-go-lucky, that's the word I was looking for. Carefree, that's how I should play this character. However, every positive emotion, every positive personality is intertwined with a negative. So for example, an affable Neopet might be unserious. They may not view things as being as important to them if it's not immediately their problem. So all emotions, all personalities come in a pair. And apparently, according to the document, this will somehow tie in to the stress system. I believe the implication is that based on your personality, the DM will just know when to impose or remove stress based on the Neopet's personality. An affable Neopet probably wouldn't receive stress from the same situation that a terrified Neopet would, you know? Like if you have a scaredy cat, they'd probably gain stress from just being in the haunted mansion type areas, whereas an affable Neopet wouldn't. So this is technically mechanical, but it's very loosey-goosey, hand-wavy roleplay stuff where it's just guidelines for how a GM should impose other mechanics that exist elsewhere. I'm not 100% against this, but unfortunately, this is a small mechanic tacked on to the end of what is a large combat engine, because it is just the majority of the document is rules for how to fight and deal damage and negate damage and beat up things. So, with all of that said, now that we've gone 2 hours, almost 3 hours into this discussion, we have finally reached the end of my notes on the actual rules as imposed by the Neopets TTRPG. Okay? However, the rules betas did not just have rules, it also included a pair of scenarios for playtesting purposes. Okay? And I probably will. You know what? I was going to be like, I could talk about the whole thing. No. At this point, I'm go broke or go home. You guys are still here somehow. There are 2 scenarios. Okay? The first one is a proper quest. MLP has done a canon transformer crossover, so that's not that far-fetched. It isn't, but it feels weird when the crossover is in a combat engine where one is a talking pony and the other one is a giant alien robot. Mechanically, the two really should not cross over, in my personal opinion. Tegan says, "This is why I'm here." Okay, all right, okay. The first scenario, right, is a bit of a fetch quest. You encounter a Chia who has had an object of theirs taken from them by bandits, and they promise that they will give you Neopoints if you can go and get it back. You have the adventure crosses over. Sorry, I'm reading chat as well. Wasn't there a lot of implication of war crimes in MLP's past? Is this where I'm about to get a bunch of MLP war game defenders in chat? Technically speaking, to be somewhat fair, Friendship is Magic did make a lot of use of Wizards of the Coast's licenses and copyrights because they were both owned by Hasbro. Don't shortcut it now, we're 3 hours in. Okay, all right, maybe I just misunderstand My Little Pony then. All right, but tell me that My Little Pony and G.I. Joe has done a weird crossover. My Little Pony and Power Rangers. Hell, Power Rangers and G.I. Joe, even though they're both human-based, feel very different from each other. The roots on this go a fucking mile away. Jesus Christ. Where was I? Oh, yes. So, you have to go and reacquire a thing from some guys, okay? The adventure takes you through the forest where there is an encounter with a bunch of pets, a bunch of tiny little lion pets who are aggressive by default, and you have to fight them in order to carry on. The lions have nothing to do with the story of the bandits and the thing they took from the Chia. right? They're just there to pad out the adventure so you have at least one guaranteed combat encounter. That is the only reason it is there, okay? Once you find the bandits, first of all, they are just kind of chilling in the middle of the woods. Bandits, like medieval style bandits, but the place that you talk to the Chia from is in the modern day area of Neopia Central. Like, they have cell phones and the police. It mentions that the police will not get involved in this for whatever reason, and that's why it's your vault. Like, there is an authority figure that this could be reported to. This is a crime that should be investigated by the very modern police force that is existing in this setting. But it is not, because the adventure has to happen. Okay? ACAB, ACAB. We'll get to the ACAB. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. We'll get to the ACAB. So these medieval style bandits are just in a wooden clearing. One of them is intoxicated. One of them is textually drunk. Now, this is an interesting bit of lore for Neopets lore heads. Way back in 1999, before the website became kid-focused, there were alcoholic drinks that you could buy for your Neopets. However, once the website adjusted to being for children, they replaced all mentions of alcohol with soda cans. All alcoholic drinks were replaced with like Neo Cola and various derivatives. So like that was scrubbed from the site. And while there are still items that have various drinks that look like martini glasses or wine bottles, they are textually not alcohol because there are children on the website. So having a character be textually intoxicated in the middle of a Neopets adventure feels very out of place. All right? So, in this conversation with these bandits, it is implied that you are meant to kill at least some of them and then use that to intimidate the others into talking. Each individual Neopet will tell you something different depending on whether or not you killed their friends. If you kill the wrong Neopet, you may lose some context forever. This is not good game design. But the majority of my issues with this adventure is the fact that it is bad adventure design for an elf game, beyond the fact that it does not match the vibes of a Neopet experience. Okay? So you're meant to kill some of these guys to get information out of them and get the bangle back. In the adventure as written, if the players put the bangle on, they feel something magical about it, but are unable to determine what it means. Okay, so this bangle does something, but the players don't know what. Does the advice for the GM inform the GM what the bangle does? No. No, it just says, yeah, it's magical. End of sentence. This is bad design. If the players decide, hey, this is magical, we can take this and run, the GM has no guidance for what it does or what it could do. It completely leaves the GM alone. And we'll get to what happens. I think we're gonna have to kill these guys, Chomby. Very much that. Very much that. All right. So you get the bangle, okay? You bring it back to the Chia, all right? It is then revealed, both to the players and to the GM, this is another issue I have, where the information the GM needs in this adventure is written in the same order the players would find out about it, as opposed to in the order the GM would need to know about it to foreshadow or lead the players towards this experience, okay? When you return, well, first of all, when you talk to the bandits, you find out they're not technically bandits, although they are bandits. They're repossessors. They stole the bangle off this Chia to repossess some of her intense gambling debts. This Chia is apparently in bad enough debt that, air quotes, the mob hired some guys to steal from her in order to recoup some of their losses. Not only that, but when you return the bangle to her, she gives you half as much gold as she promised you. But, and this is like a punchline, she says she'll be good for it next week. Because she's a gambler, you see. She's in such debt that she has to lie to the party about how much money she is going to pay them. That is, one, utterly ridiculous and not fun, but two, bad adventure design. I cannot, if someone at an elf game pulled that shit with me as a player, not even as like a fellow designer who's like, ah, that's cute, that's funny, I like that, it's a good joke, I would be enraged if this happened to me. Now, here's where we get back to ACAB, right? Because at the beginning of the adventure, they state that the Neopian police, the Chia police, are not taking this seriously. They're not involved. However, if you go back to the Chia, this is in the text, if the players go back to the Chia and then withhold the bangle for any reason, which I would argue non-payment is a good reason not to give her the fucking bangle, she will then call the Chia police to arrest the players. What? The Chia police that couldn't be fucked 5 minutes ago? The Chia police that had no care for this woman or her plight about her bangle just said, whatever, unless the players commit what is quote unquote a crime? This makes no sense. This is bad adventure design and does not match up with the actual fantasy of Neopia Central. At best, the cops should be calming her down and ask the players, hey, we're going to follow up a lead in town. Are you willing to go check the forest to make sure they haven't escaped our dragnet or whatever? At which point the Neopets, who are used to being given quests by each other, go, yeah, sure, we'll investigate the forest. And then, the bandits are there. And they can choose to get the bangle back or go tell the police where the bandits are. Like, that would be a much better framing. At that point, the police are already involved. You know what? I'm doing it again. This is the thing. Every TTRPG designer who I have spoken to who have an opinion about this immediately wants to jump into fixing it because the potential for this game is there. And the ways to make it better are basically, I don't want to say solved in some design circles, but the methods by which you solve the problems that this document raises is kind of common knowledge to a lot of people who do stuff on Kickstarter with TTRPGs. Like, if one actual published TTRPG designer had been involved in this project would not be in the state it's in. Would it be good? Who knows? It might still be shit. Would it be better than what we have? At the very least, it would be coherent. Honestly, Sheila, we're nearing the end, believe it or not. So the rest of the VOD you should be able to catch up on later. I do not plan on doing a write-up of this. I've just been having these bouncing in my head for the last 2 weeks, and this is my one outlet, after which I'm going to just let it die. This is me getting it all out. All right. So that was session 1. That was the first scenario. Okay? My notes for scenario 2 reads, what the fuck? All right. So the start of the adventure reads, quote, I copy and pasted how this reads, all right? On page 222 of this document, quote, starting the adventure. Established parties and new adventurers may both be drawn into this adventure. If the party is established, have a random event strike them with a particularly difficult foe or a sleeping spell that causes the party to pass out. When they come to, as with an entirely new party, they find themselves in the healing springs of Fairyland. I'm sorry. Are you telling me that if you want to run this scenario with an established party, instead of, I don't know, starting in media res, or maybe only using it if the players choose to go to the location where the adventure is, the adventure says you should purposefully KO your players at the beginning of the adventure so they have an excuse to be at Fairyland? What? What if they win the fight? What if, for whatever reason or mechanical doodadery, they happen to have the perfect counter to the sleeping spell? What if the GM says, no, it doesn't work, and you fall asleep and you wake up in fairyland, and they have a bad time because they've been literally railroaded? This paragraph, the start of this scenario, does not need to exist, and yet it does, as though it's good GM advice. This concerns me for a number of reasons, but most of all, what kind of games are the TTRPG devs for this game playing? Like, if this is what they expect to be good advice, what kind of 5th edition have they been subjected to? Are you telling me these poor fucks haven't even been playing good 5th edition? Are you telling me they've been playing bad 5th edition, and that's what they're basing their experience for this project on? Jesus fucking wept. Okay, so the actual adventure, by the way, involves you talking to the Queen of the Fairies, Fiora, who tells them, hey, my cat is missing. A Meowclops, which is a cat, which has one eye, has gone missing. And oh no, I hope they haven't gotten themselves stuck in the fairy caves nearby. Okay? So this is, arguably, a dungeon crawl adventure, where you are going through this dungeon and trying to find this missing Meowclops. Fair enough. I do not have the notes here, but I can tell you straight up that every path that isn't the main path leads to a single room with one thing in it. Most of the time, it is a combat scenario with someone who is completely unrelated. You're gonna fight robot pets in there. Do the robot pets have anything to do with anything? No. Are you able to investigate what's up with the robot pets that keep trying to attack you in these caves? No. Random stuff just happens in every single room, which again is primarily just rooms off the side of a straightaway. When you finally reach the end, there is a robot pet who is trying to eat the Meowclops, so you have to beat him up. There is no guidance either in the beta rules or in the adventure for how to pacifistically save this Meowclops from this robot pet. The giant, it's a robot side bunny. A robot rabbit is going to eat this cat, and you have to save it. Okay? Once you have saved the cat, you take the cat back to Fiora, and the cat, unrelated to anything, uses its special cat ability to reveal a hidden invisible tower, which, again, is a thing in Neopets. Fiora does, in fact, have an invisible tower that can be revealed by certain kinds of magic, and in the lore, the Meowclops' eyes can see through invisibility spells. Alright? So then you have an adventure where you go in and someone is stealing a bunch of shit from Fiora's tower. This is 2 different adventures, for one thing, right? But also, what if you don't go in the tower? What if you completely say, well, here's the Meowclops, we're gonna go off and do literally anything else? Half the adventure is just about getting to where the air quotes adventure is supposed to be, and it's entirely missable. And speaking of entirely missable, you know how the entire basic premise was that you were to find this missing Meowclops, right? The GM guidance states that the players can just go find a Meowclops and pass it off as being Fiora's. There is guidance for how to roleplay Fiora if she succeeds at, well, rather, if the players fail at a lying check to convince her that the Meowclops is hers. But that implies that it is entirely possible and textually acceptable for your players to give this woman a random cat, say it's hers, and leave the actual Meowclops to die in the caves. There is guidance to skip the entire first half of the adventure. So, like, potentially, your players, right, could get a fake Meowclops, get another Meowclops, bypass the cave adventure entirely. Not go in the tower, bypass the entire adventure entirely. So their experience could be, hey, we met the Queen of Fairies, we found a cat, gave it to her, she gave us experience points, and that was the end of the session for us. We went elsewhere. We went away. This is just ridiculous. No one who wrote this likes, well, let's not go that far. Let's not go that far. The people who like this really like Neopets. The people who wrote this are not playing good elf games if they think this is acceptable. And that is harsh. I don't know if I would call it fair. It feels personal to say that people involved in this are not passionate about the thing they are making. I just do not think they are good at what they are making. Being a consumer of a product does not make you skilled enough to produce that product. Knowing all of the Neopets lore does not mean that you are a shoo-in to write official Neopets content. Being a fan of something does not preclude you from being bad at making the thing that you enjoy. This entire project is a textbook example of a TTRPG heartbreaker, of someone who has experience with the thing they enjoy, but not enough experience to understand where the rest of the hobby has gone with it, or what pitfalls they can ignore when moving into being producers, presenting their game, which is technically, it has some good smaller ideas, but is largely just the thing they like again, because they don't have the experience to know how to write it differently, presenting it as though it's a brand new fantastic thing, only for it to be old hat to pretty much anyone else who's read more widely than them. It is upsetting, it is disappointing, and I'll be honest with you, it would be acceptable except for one thing. The fact that they were given 428 American dollars to do it. That price tag turns this from an uncomfortable and at times hilariously bad game to an unacceptable professional attempt to make a product that is being sold for money. $428,000 was the total amount of the Kickstarter. Granted, Kickstarter takes a percentage of that. Granted, part of that was sent back to the Neopets team for the license to publish this in the first place. The team who is making the game is not sitting on $400K, okay? They are sitting on a smaller amount, and a large amount of that money has to be invested into the producing of all of the doodads they promised. Again, let me scroll back up and read that off, okay? Let's see here. GM screen, a dice set, dice pouches, printable map packs, physical journals, an entire second hardcover book, which is just a campaign set during the Fall of Fairyland event from the Neopets website. The PDF versions, character sheet packs, premium updates to the book covers, art print postcards, an entirely new section to be added into the book, which then expands the cost of the book to print, I must add, a deck of event cards, hardcover slipcases, additional battle and world maps on top of the ones they already had planned, expanded journal packs that have to have art made for them and then produced separately from the previous ones they made, a dice tray, punch sheets for their tokens, new dice pouches on top of the one they had already made, and illustrated card standees. And although these were not reached, they also expected to make additional play modules and entire online VTT. Yes, Tegan, Jesus fucking Christ. This is a project made by people who were so confident in their ability to deliver that not only did they overpromise, they didn't even have the skills for the base thing they offered. It's very much like what could it cost? Like, what could a banana cost? $10? It's very much that. They've Dunning-Krugered themselves into this situation. And as I mentioned earlier, whatever draft they had already spent 2 years working on was apparently revoked when the people working on it left the project and took their work with them. This is after 2 years, a year and a half of scrambling to match up what they promised. It is a big, big fumble, a huge fumble. How many people have asked for refunds? Well, that is something that I did want to bring up. As part of my part in this whole debacle, I decided that I would actually seek out the people who I was arguably complaining about, right? There are real people who were excited for this project, who are working on this project, who gave money to this project. I did not back this. I have no horse in this race. I'm going to see if anyone needs to sleep, actually. There we go. So I joined the Discord. Now, before you freak out, I joined the Discord specifically to be a silent observer. I am not there to snitch on anyone. I am not there to push my agenda or voice my opinions. I already did that. I made a bunch of comments on how I think the game could be improved and where they could avoid pitfalls on the comments of the Google Docs. And I wish I still had access to that original Google Doc so I could read a few of my suggestions off as examples for what I suggested them, just like as proof that, you know, I'm behaving. I'm not in this for the outrage. I'm not like a tourist showing up to look at the car crash, right? I'm genuinely trying to be helpful. But I wanted to join the Discord because I wanted to hear and see what the people who are financially invested in this project are saying. And there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of people who also have only ever played 5th edition who don't see what all the fuss is. This is what they expected. They thought that this game would play like 5th edition because to them, that's what TTRPGs are. There's no disconnect for some of them. However, there are some people who are very verbally angry. There have been pings from mods being like, hey, I've tried contacting you via Kickstarter. I want a refund. It has been a half a year since this book was supposed to be delivered. I have received nothing. I do not like what the beta is. I do not want this money tied up in this project any further. And now, to be fair to the Geekify team, however it's being handled, if they are offering refunds or if they are not, this was a Kickstarter project. A failure to deliver is always possible because a Kickstarter is not a pre-order service. You are being given the product if it comes to fruition as a thank you for helping fund the production. There are many things, not just in TTRPGs, but there are many Kickstarters that never fund either because, or never come to fruition, either because the individuals who made the Kickstarter did not understand how much money it would take to make the thing, people die, there are massive social and cultural shifts that make the production of those items no longer tenable. Like, the entire Kickstarter brand of TTRPG production has been utterly fucked ever since Trump decided to upgrade those tariffs. Once those tariffs were implemented, suddenly all of the supply chains that were used for producing TTRPGs were gutted at best, if not completely destroyed. It is not a good time to be making a tabletop role-playing game. And normally, a smart developer who has experience in the medium they're working with would talk about and prepare for those possibilities in order for the people who back the Kickstarter to still get their shit. This project was already overperforming before you even considered the possibility of there being setbacks. So, if Geekify has not been offering refunds to people who have been verbal about it, it is within their rights, and I cannot blame them for that. But it's still really shitty, especially because it shows to me how many people backed this expecting it to be a pre-order, not as a risk they were taking. And that's upsetting for them and for me. Because once someone is financially invested in a product they feel they have bought, it is different from a Kickstarter where it's like, I am giving money towards making this exist. I want this to exist, right? It's a completely different frame of mind, a different mindset. However, what I've also noticed on the Discord, which is troubling, is that before and during and especially after this whole debacle came about with a beta test, a large part of the conversation is people who are not being paid by Geekify to make this RPG essentially designing the RPG by committee. They have made multiple threads to talk about specific mechanics at the end of the original Kickstarter, like right before it fully funded. But before it ended, rather. It funded very quickly. Before it ended, there was a call on the Kickstarter page with a submission form asking people what mechanics they would like to see in the game. Not content, not would you like to see more fairy stuff or Mystery Island stuff? Would you like to see more weapons or would you like to see more clothing options? They asked for mechanic ideas. This game has not just been designed by a committee, it's being designed by the people who paid for it. And most of those people are not game designers. So while a lot of the conversation around people who are not being paid to do this work are talking about how other games work and how those systems could be imported into this D20 system, it also feels very much like, I don't know, I don't want to say scummy, but it adds to the credence that the people who were involved in this had no idea what they were getting into. If they did not have the mechanics laid out properly before the Kickstarter went live, they stated they had been working on a system for 2 years prior to the Kickstarter going live, and yet by the end of the Kickstarter, they were crowdsourcing ideas for how the dice math should work from the people who had already given them $428,000 to make the game. It is not a good look. It is not a good time. There is also a lot of defensiveness from the people who are on the team. Most of the people who have been talking publicly are people who are not on the mechanics team. They're people who are on the lore team. Oh, hello. Everything okay? Oh, okay. You know what? Let's take a 10-minute break. I got to give my beautiful wife her shoes on. I've been talking for 3 hours. I have like one more topic that I want to cover before we end the stream. So like, we'll do that and be back in 10 minutes. Give me a second, guys. Oh, I got to tap out of this, don't I? All right, that wasn't quite 10 minutes, but I'll call it good. Okay. Whoop. Oh. All right, so I guess Sono's in the mines or something, so maybe I should also go into the mines. Let me fix up my stuff. Let me fix my thorium pickaxe, And probably my daggers as well. All right. Sono never sleeps, lol. Yeah, this is why we have to have the fucking multiplayer sleep in order for any of us to get anything done. Love you, Sono. You're probably not watching this. I highly doubt Sono wants to hear my 4-hour ramblings about how I don't like the Neopets TTRPG. All right. Oh, I forgot. I did get these berry bushes, didn't I? Well, I was out on my adventure. All right. Let me put them... Not put in between here and here. Oh. Just one, huh? All right. Fair enough. Let me go craft some torches. And then we'll hop down into the mine. All right. So, where was I in my notes? Just the one for now? Yeah. Let me grab 10 of these, 10 more of those, 10 more of those, 10 more of those. And then I'll put you in my offhand. I think I may have overdone it with the crafting. There we go. Okay. Put this up here, put this here. I can't really lose anything, so I should just kind of sort this out like so. I don't want the hoe, I don't need the X. Just need you and you. All right. Fantastic. Let's head down to the mines. Hoy. All right. So, with that stated, me being on the Discord, me talking... Oh, I remember what I was saying. The most verbal individuals who have been talking publicly about the event are not people who are on the mechanics team. As a matter of fact, of the 4 people of the... I want to say there's like 8 or 9 individuals who are not John Taylor of Geekify, who are on the official development team right now. Only 5 of them are listed as mechanics developers. The rest are listed as the lore developers, which is completely fair because Neopets has a long and winding lore, and they intend to leverage it for both interesting ideas in the games, but also for brand recognition. They don't want Queen Fiora to show up and not feel like Queen Fiora. The Jelly Neo team, the people from the fan side I mentioned, they're the ones who are doing a lot of the lore stuff because they themselves have spent a very long time documenting and keeping track of all the little details about what makes Neopets Neopets, which is fantastic. This, however, comes to something that I discovered very quickly, and I had to have a friend of mine actually reach out and very gently tell me, like, hey, your experience of Neopets is not the experience of the hardcore fandom who's been supporting it while you were away. And I had to stop and be like, elaborate on that. And they did. They offered me a bunch of resources to describe what the fandom has been going through and what, quote unquote, Neopets fans expect out of this project versus TTRPG fans. So I did want to speak to that a little bit before we end this entire sesh, because there is, in fact, a bunch of things about Neopets, the brand and the website, that make some of the choices by the TTRPG team make a little more sense. I still don't think they're good, but it makes a little more sense, you know? So first of all, I mentioned previously that there are plots, and there are stories, and there are comics in Neopets. On the website, how this usually works is that a comic page or 2 will be updated, and with it, a new function of the site. There'll be a new opponent themed around the event in the Battle Dome, new items will be added, but essentially, there is an ongoing story happening in the pages of these comic books that tell the tale of an adventure, and then the audience who is reading it and viewing it on Neopets then gets themed interactables around that thing to do. Sometimes the players have to complete a number of interactables before the story progresses. Sometimes the story continues on regardless of what the players do, and it's a timed event where if you don't interact before the next page goes up, you missed out entirely. It changes. And some of the best well-known stories tend to be around world-altering events where there's danger and magic and monsters and named characters who grab their swords and shields and they go out and they handle whatever the issue is. So on some level, for people who experience Neopets as being a world in which an ongoing narrative takes place and the main players are all big damn hero types, 5th edition starts to make a little bit more sense. But it goes even further than that, because while Neopets is, arguably, a children's website for children, it has always been made by and played by adults. And over the years, as Neopets, the company, has been sold to multiple places, and the team who works on it has had more or less oversight, references and content aimed as like wink wink nudge nudge as at that adult fandom has only grown. There are a number of characters who are implied to have sex. They are usually like grown adult anthropomorphized Neopets, as opposed to the Neopets that you take care of and calls you owner and talks to you as though they are a child, but they still exist. Same with references to alcohol. There is a big disconnect between what happens in the comics versus what happens on the website as an experience. And this has been mentioned by the devs in questions over the years. I think back in 2007, the canonical answer for what the fuck's going on was given, and it is this, okay? A developer whose name I did not write down said in a public question and answer session, that the differences between... Hello? Rats? I heard a rat. Rat? Oh, there it is. You're not a rat, you're a weevil! What the fuck is this? A silk larva? Thank you. I did not like that at all. The official answer is that Neopets the website and Neopets the comic lore are two different universes. The events that take place in the universe where they're all humanoid anthros that are like sexy furries is different from the universe in which they are on all fours and they are your pets. However, the events of one directly affect the other. The named Neopets characters who are anthros, who are sexy buff people with swords and magic, have no idea that the universe with the human owners, where they are all on fours and pets, exists. So when an event happens in the adventure universe, it happens in the regular pet universe. So like when Fairyland fell during the Fall of Fairyland event, crash landed into the earth and became a permanent part of the land, that happened on the website. Just don't think about how it happened. When Neopets, when the adventure takes place, they don't worry about things like inventory slots or customizing your clothes or the real money website where you can pay money to get more items on the website, the Neocash currency. That doesn't take place in that universe, so don't worry about it. And this makes sense when you consider how Neopets brands itself. It focuses on the layman branding, on its merchandise, on its clothing, on its toys, focused on the pet universe. However, once you are a fan and you are invested, you are no longer being marketed to by those things. That's to get people into the website, to get children playing. Once you're on the website and you start growing up with the website, you are expected to interact with the lore, to see what's going on in the story of the Neopets world, care about it, and then the stakes have to be raised because it's no longer just about little pets. It's a whole... This is a problem with Neopets as a brand, less so Neopets as a TTRPG. This disconnect, I think, does not do the brand any favors, even if in the short term, it works as a marketability thing. It leads to the backlash, like we saw from Blue Sky, where they saw sex and alcohol and violence and death in a Neopets TTRPG and went, that's not what Neopets is. Well, it is what Neopets is. It's just not what most people have ever experienced Neopets as. The TTRPG team is not being called upon to solve this problem, but because they are making a game set in the world around this IP, it is a problem that they have to solve. And I, as a game designer, find it very fascinating to think about what a game that has to deal with these constraints could look like. How do you make as many people as possible happy? How do you justify the expectation of the layman with the desires of the hardcore fan? How do you have your Neo Cake and Neo Eat It too? This TTRPG team is not up for that challenge at all. This isn't me being mean. This is me being like, hey, you've given someone without proper training rocket science and expected them to make it to the moon. It's not okay, frankly. Raglan comes in and says, I can't believe how bad Hytale is. The game forces its players to become modders just to fix it because it doesn't fulfill the fantasy. Like 5th edition. Mods, you are on my payroll. Ban that man. He has made a point which undermines mine in the middle of my Twitch stream and therefore must be excommunicated. And Tegan's sweating. Tegan's sweating like, that's also my boss, Gadda. You can't ask me to do that. I'm also on Raglan's payroll. God damn it. He's bribed my mods. I can't believe this. To that point, however, I also did a lot of research into how the fandom views Neopets. Not necessarily just as like a consumer, but how they interact with Neopets separately, right? And I'm going to be blunt with you guys. I'm going to say something that's going to sound like I'm going off the wall here, but I need you to understand that I'm saying it with the best intentions possible, okay? All right? 90% of the existing Neopets fandom, like the ones that actively still play and are super invested and make art and draw OCs and have strong opinions about what they should be able to do with the Neopets TTRPG, are furries. Non-derogatory furries. From the very beginning, this website has offered people a chance to interact with fantastical animal creatures, and a lot of them do so in the sense that they project themselves onto those animals. A large part of the fan base wants to be themselves, but be a Neopet. And like with the lore thing, there is a disconnect there because the website is about the Neopets as pets. They are creatures that you, the human, take care of. They were not designed, the mechanics were not designed to fulfill the fantasy of being a fantastical furry creature, but of participating with and being friends with a fantastical furry creature. This disconnect has only gotten stronger as the lore stuff for Neopets supports the fantasy of being an anthropomorphized Neopet. And on some level, that does include the sexual fantasy of being a fantastical creature and doing things with other fantastical Anthrobara creatures. There is nothing wrong with that. It is, however, something that Neopets, the company, has supported and propagated despite it not being the core loop of the thing they are arguably trying to sell. They have been marketing a lot of content to that adult furry community artists instead of what their merchandising is, which is basically Pooh Bear with extra steps, right? It's like in the Digimon fandom, there are people who want to fuck Renamon. In the Sonic fandom, there are people who want to fuck Sonic. They are large and important members of those communities, and the rights holders, respectively, benefit from having them around. If someone were to write a Sonic the Hedgehog TTRPG, and because they think the fandom wants it, canonically included Shadow the Hedgehog Mpreg in the book, that would be a massive misunderstanding of the brand, even if it is in an attempt to curtail to the audience that it knows will buy the thing. I think that when the Neopets TTRPG comes out, there will be people who will want it for the pet sim elements and people who want it for the I am a furry creature going on an adventure elements, and absolutely people who want it for the I am a furry creature and me and my furry creature friends are going to fuck elements. There is nothing wrong with playing those games that way. People do it with D&D all the time. However, I do not think the core book needs to cater to all of those playstyles. It should cater to the primary playstyle that the large majority of its audience is going to expect, and if others use it for something else, well, that's on them. That's on them. But it does make a lot more sense to me why the backlash to the backlash has been so strong. A lot of people who have been receiving these nuggets of support for their preferred idea of what Neopets is are now faced with a project that can't possibly be all of them, is low-key trying to be all of them, and failing at being any one of them. So, where do we go from here with regards to the Neopets TTRPG? The beta was removed. It is no longer publicly accessible. I only still have a copy of it because very early on during the whole debacle, the weekend over which all of the social media stuff happened, someone decided, you know what? I would not blame them to take this and run. Just leave and pretend it never happened. So because it was a publicly available Google Doc, they backed up a copy to themselves, and that copy is what is being spread around. It is in PDF form. One could argue that the document could be edited then, if it's from a third source. I read the original document and everything seems in place to me. There are some minor things that are missing that were added during the backlash, and of course all the comments that people made were not exported into the PDF that I have, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would love to have shared some insights from other designers who offered free work to try and fix this whole thing. They claim that there will be another beta at some point in the future. However, that claim has come with radio silence from basically everyone involved. The individuals who are publicly talking about their experience with the team and defending some of the choices made by the team have gone silent. John Taylor of Geekify, I've probably done that more than once. John Taylor of Geekify has made some statements responding to people in the Discord, but nothing about the future of the project. Mostly just responding as one would as a community manager, trying to keep conversation going, haha, yeah, how's it going? Have a great day. That sort of thing. John Geekify. Honestly, I could probably just limit it to that. John Geekify. There have been some very solid points raised by people who are both for and against the current system, asking for clarification from the dev team that has gone unanswered. From a marketing and brand perspective, going silent and like regrouping to figure out what the fuck you're gonna do next is smart. I do not begrudge them that, but it does mean that it does leave conversation about the game up to speculation. Had they managed to pull it before the document was spread around, they might have been able to silence the response and then do something quietly and privately later when they've had a second draft. The biggest defense they've made of it is that, of course, the beta document was only about combat because the beta document was only supposed to be about combat. That was the only thing they were stress testing and not anything else. I want to give them some credit and follow where they say they're leading. I think that's a load of hooey. I do not foresee that they have a bunch of other stuff already written in a different document that somehow was never referenced in the combat part of the document, or that they couldn't have simply solved the issue of everyone saying, hey, you've made a combat simulator for fucking Neopets. They could have solved this by just releasing the rest of the document if it existed. I would love to be proved wrong. It feels very mean of me to be like, no, they're lying. But it doesn't sit right with me that if the rest of this game that they are promising exists in a work in progress form, that they wouldn't just release it when the backlash to the initial beta dropped. Like, taking their ball and going home with it does not speak to confidence in whatever it is they do have written up. So now we are all on a holding pattern. I will say that the result of all of this has led to a lot of people being interested in going back to Neopets, reliving their memories of when they did play it fondly, and also talking about the adaptation of existing IP into TTRPGs in general. I've seen a lot of really good conversations, both in blogs and podcasts, and just in conversations in Discord about the nature of adapted works in tabletop role-playing games, what they have been historically, and where they tend to fall. As with any discourse in TTRPGs, the best silver lining you can get when it goes bad is at least we got a bunch of people talking about things. And hopefully inspiring them to try new things, to solve the problems being raised during those discussions. Yeah, there is a jam that I'm going to post a link to. I really should have had this up ahead of time. Let me go to the Neo Jam. Where did I? Well, no, I have a link to a to a Space Jam remix of the Neopets official soundtrack. Hold on a minute. I joined it on itch, so I should be able to find it from here. There is a jam going on itch.io right now, which is basically in response to this whole debacle, where it essentially challenges people to make your own jam about Neopets, either about Neopets or inspired by Neopets, or pardon me, just inspired by where is it? Neon Futures? That's not it. Damn it, I had it right here. I wish I had it more frequently. Let me scroll up in this group here to the jam. Hold on a minute. I can immediately send you to Hueva Amigos, which is what Kef Tiu, one of the designers that I follow, Thursday Guro, wrote. Let's see here. Yes, it's called Go Weave a Basket. That's why I couldn't fucking find it. Yeah, I'm working on a project that I'm going to be submitting to it as well. So, like... Oh, hold on a minute. No, I have to go to the project page itself. Overview. Here we are. So, itch.io/jam/go-weave-a-basket. Currently, there are 3 submissions. I'm working on a 4th. And it's just us trying to make a game around the idea of Neopets and virtual pet simulators, as opposed to maybe necessarily like adapting Neopets one-to-one. I don't think anyone really wants that smoke for that. And yeah, that is my 3-hour and 35-minute rant about what happened with the Neopets TTRPG the weekend before last. I hope that you found this informative. I hope that you found this interesting. If you reach this point, it's probably interesting enough. I hope you understand very well that I don't want... Thank you. I don't want the end result of this just to be geekified devs bad at making game. I want this to be... Oh, thank you, Raglan. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Oh. I hope that by the end of this, the Neopets TTRPG comes out and is playable. It is playable. Thank you, Kiwi. Thank you so much. Oh, you're too kind. I hope that the Neopets fans who spent money on this Kickstarter fully... Thank you, Dragon. Thank you so... Oh, yes. Of course. Thank you. I hope that the people who paid money for this feel that they got their stuff's worth. And I hope that at the very least Geekify and Neopets itself learn a bit of a lesson about their own product and how to handle branding it. You really have to understand both the spirit of the thing you've made, but also the spirit in which the people who use that thing perceive it in order to make a seriously good adaptation. And yeah, with any luck, the book will at the very least be a very good setting guide for people who love Neopets to take and go adventure in their favorite worlds. I will, however, end the stream with one final note. The Kickstarter launched with a video trailer detailing what they wanted the thing to be before going into the actual Kickstarter page to extrapolate all of that. And the entire video was set to a backing track of what I can only assume was an unlicensed use of the song "The Geeks Will Inherit the Earth" by I Fight Dragons, which is frankly, the most millennial-coded thing they could have possibly done, and instantly set the stage for everything else that has transpired after. I am still agog that was the music they went with for their medieval fantasy Neopets Adventure TTRPG Kickstarter. And with that, I am going to say good night and adieu. Thank you all for joining me. It is no longer morning, but I really hope that I gave you a good one. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. So long. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.